Hey guys, welcome back to another interesting story on What if Deku stole the source code of reality? If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. So without any delay, let's get straight into the video. People are not born equal. Yet despite knowing this, it did not stop 5-year-old Izuku Midoriya from doing what he thought was right. Sure, his quirk was diagnosed quirkless and made a social outcast with today's society having a hard-on for quirks, but that wouldn't stop him. Enough Kakin, said Izuku, bravely despite trembling himself while standing in front of another boy who was crying on the ground. You already made him cry. I won't let you abuse your quirk and harm others. Oi, oi Deku, began the spiky blonde kid with red eyes as he smacked his fist into his palm, activating his quirk to make a small explosion. The quirkless wonder thinks he can play hero. This boy was Katsuki Bakugo, who was Izuku's friend until he got his quirk. Let's get him, shouted another child, his fingers extending until it was twice as tall as he was. Another chubby child with red bat wings that allowed him to hover above the others nodded in agreement as the three boys charged in to attack Izuku. After quickly ganging up on Izuku with the long finger boy holding Izuku hostage while Katsuki and the chubby kid pummeled him. Katsuki was using his quirk, which allowed his sweat to excrete a chemical similar to nitroglycerin from his palms and ignite it to create explosions. Izuku felt his eyes starting to swell from the impacts. You just a useless Deku, sneered Katsuki as he continued to punch Izuku. You want to be a hero, you're worthless. This was not the first time that the three boys were beating up Izuku in public. They didn't even consider what they were doing as bullying, but rather heroes beating up a bad guy, aka an easy target, nor did they even consider a sense of fair play. Izuku was losing hope in this society. He had seen a hero even pass by, only to do nothing as he ignored them. Another hero even gave Katsuki a thumbs up, shouting something about beating up the null and showing the proper hierarchy before giving an L-shaped salute with his right hand. Not that the boys knew what it meant, but it just reinforced the fact that Katsuki thought he was in the right, that he was a hero. All right, I'm getting bored. Let's finish this with a bang, grinned Katsuki, raising his hand once more. Take this, villain. Before he could finish it, a hand grabbed his arm, stopping Katsuki cold. That's enough. The boy hasn't even done anything to you all, and yet you find it amusing to torture him, and even have the gall to call yourselves heroes. Where's your sense of honor or humanity? The voice that spoke to them had a chilly tone that cut all of them to their core before they looked to the source to see man with long black hair with a tint of blue, tied up into a ponytail that went past his shoulder blades. His clothes, however, looked quite weird, wearing a white collar cloak with a blue tang suit underneath it. What's with the weird-ass ancient-looking clothes, blurted out Katsuki before struggling to get out of the man's grip. Let go of me. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Villain, let go of the child, shouted a hero while sliding into position. There will be no kidnapping under my watch. It was the same man that had given them the L-shaped salute several days ago. You're kidding me, scoffed the man. These three were bullying the other child, and you turn a blind eye, and yet when I stop them, you come rushing in now. Where's your sense of duty and justice? All I saw were some kids roughhousing around while also establishing the proper hierarchy and preparing the quirkless brat where he belongs. Underneath us proper humans as slaves, sneered the hero. At this point, he's not even worth being called human. While two of Katsuki's lackeys cheered upon hearing this while not understanding his words, Katsuki frowned at this. This wasn't what he wanted. Sure, he thought Izuku was a Deku, but that didn't mean he thought Izuku as someone who wasn't even human. Did he? Izuku was starting to tear up upon hearing a hero of all things calling him that. Why wasn't I born with a quirk? Questioned Izuku. Even something as minor as being able to bend my toes another way or something. Instead, just having that second joint as made others not even treat me as a person. The man, however, laughed loudly as if he heard a joke. If that's true, then the rest of you are just ants below me, declared the man. The hero's eye twitched before raising his arm. Then show me your quirk, villain. Quirk don't got one of those, nor do I need one. Shrugged the man. I got the extra pinky joint like the green-haired kid does. But I warn you, you're courting death if you want to fight me. Then you're a stupid fool, grinned the hero maliciously as he began to charge up his quirk. I can kill this man legally, saying that he was a threat to society nobody would care, because he's quirkless for liberation. For Redestro, for why is this man's fist getting bigger? The hero didn't have time to think anymore, as the man punched the hero in the face so hard that the hero was knocked unconscious, as well as being slammed into the ground. Well, that was pathetic, scoffed the man as he wiped his hand on the hero's costume. Courting death indeed. Now then, the man turned around to see Katsuki's lackeys already running away, with Katsuki halfway towards them, though hesitating before reaching his hand towards Izuku. "Come on, Deku! We need to get out of here," shouted Katsuki, extending his hands towards Izuku. Izuku didn't move, unable to decide what to do. On one hand, a hero had been defeated. On the other hand, the hero had been insulting him, and the man who defeated him had said he was also quirkless. He didn't seem like a villain either, especially since it was the hero that had started first. Not only that, he stopped Katsuki and the others from bullying him. The man smiled as he crouched down to Izuku's eye level. "Don't worry. I won't hurt you. Let's get you patched up." As the man helped Izuku up to his feet, he glanced at Katsuki. Instantly, Katsuki felt something pressing down on him, as if gravity had increased. "Don't tell anyone what happened, and I won't tell the authorities about you abusing your quirk. If it becomes known, then your desire to become a hero will be impossible. They'll make sure of it." Katsuki heard that statement and shivered before realizing Izuku hadn't reacted at all. He was sure if Izuku had heard it, he would have said something, meaning the man had somehow said that statement for him only to hear. Is it a quirk? Thought Katsuki before dismissing it. The man had stated he was quirkless, so unless he was lying, Katsuki didn't want to think more of it. With that, Katsuki left. "Come on, we don't want to be here when the others find out," said the man as he took Izuku up in his arms before suddenly disappearing from sight. Izuku breathed in and out as everything turned blurry before discovering they were now on the roof of his family's apartment complex, far away from the crime scene. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you," said the man as he gently put Izuku down. Thank you," said Izuku meekly, causing the man to chuckle. "Don't worry, it wasn't much effort," said the man as he rubbed Izuku's hair. "So I hear you want to be a hero. Tell me, why satisfy this one's curiosity?" Izuku was silent for a moment, but the man seemed patient as he sat there. Soon, Izuku spilled everything. How he wanted to become a hero to help people, like All Might did. He didn't care too much about being a popular hero, though he wouldn't mind. But he wanted to save people, to bring hope with a smile, just like All Might did. While kids his age just wanted to become a hero because it would make them popular or rich, his reason had never changed. But it all came crashing down when he was diagnosed as quirkless. The daycare teachers tried their best to treat him as an equal, but there were some who clearly favored the other children and ignored the freak. And now, even heroes think I'm worthless, sighed Izuku. What's the point in living in this society if everyone thinks I'm not human? You know that's not true, said the man lightly, though disheartening. I doubt everyone has the same viewpoint. Your parents love you still, don't they? And I'm sure there are people out there who care for you. But what can I do? Asked Izuku, starting to cry. Everyone ignores me, even when I try to make other friends. Only Kakin ever bothers to talk to me, even though he's a bully. To be ignored by everyone, or to at least have his existence acknowledged, even as a punching bag, thought the man, both are poor choices, but I suppose he does at least want someone to see him. The man hummed as he looked up to the sky. He had been in this world for a few weeks to explore, and already he had discovered some things about this world. He could leave now if he wanted to, but the boy had caught his interest. At that moment, he made his decision. What's your name? Asked the man before introducing himself. Yonkai. Izuku, Midoriya, sniffed Izuku as he wiped his eyes. Well then, Izuku, Midoriya, do you want to become a cultivator? Then asked Yonkai. Izuku looked up in confusion before Yang, Kai stood up fully, letting Izuku see him in his glory as the sun set behind him. Cultivators, we are destined to go against the heavens. Yet because we defy the heavens, we grow stronger and force the heavens to accept our existence. You said that society rejects you. How about defying them, rising above them all, and becoming a hero that you envision, not what society has set for you? As Izuku heard this, his heart pounded as he looked up at Yonkai. Suddenly, the man in front of him didn't seem so simple, but rather his existence seemed to grow even bigger. Soon, everything faded away, leaving only darkness, yet Yonkai stood in front of him. Izuku could somehow feel power emanating from Yonkai that defied all logic. "Do you want to become my disciple?" asked Yonkai. Izuku couldn't help but kneel before replying yes. "But why me? I mean, Kakin is super." Yonkai interrupted him. "True, he has talent, but he will never be able to cultivate." Izuku blinked in confusion as Yonkai elaborated. "I've discovered that anyone that has a quirk can never cultivate, or at least it will be harder. Not too sure, but maybe it's a trade-off. Being blessed by the heavens and earth, they will never try to surpass it, whereas cultivators go against them. Or maybe it's something else, but I've never gone into it. You can cultivate, I can tell. But most importantly, I've seen your character. You fought because they were bullying another child, intervening on behalf of another. You've never started a fight for no reason. Though you're weaker than others, martial arts and other skills can always be improved upon. One's character, however, is almost impossible to change. Your moral strength surpasses others. Your will exceeds even some that I know. So tell me, will you become a cultivator and defy the heavens themselves?" Izuku couldn't help but shiver before raising his head. "As long as it doesn't go against my moral code and against what it means to be a hero, then yes." Yonkai couldn't help but laugh before nodding, promising that he would never force Izuku to do something so evil. While people were not born equal, there was always a chance to surpass others. Several years pass. 12-year-old Izuku was meditating on a piece of rock, taking in the environment as it was. He was sitting in a rather beautiful area with a pond and a small waterfall that fed into it. Near him were some trees that fed into the scenery, as well as some flowers. Just down the road from the pond was a villa that Izuku currently lived in by himself. Inko was currently with her husband, traveling along with him. How this came to be was that his master, Yonkai, had managed to save some super rich businessman's life, as well as protect his family. The man was so grateful that he insisted on repaying Yonkai. Although even if Yonkai had done nothing, the man would have lived a crippled life, as well as losing half of his family's fortune. Though in honesty, even if he had lost half of his fortune, he was still very rich and could make up the deficit in just a few years. "If you hadn't come, save my family, then my enemies would have taken half of the fortune, and nobody would have helped us. Even the pro-heroes would have turned their backs against us, stating that it wasn't their problem," explained the man. "The enemy used loopholes and bribery to strike at my family. The fact you stopped it means everything to me. My daughter might have been harmed, or worse, taken from me. I don't care if you're not a pro-hero, you're my family's savior." Not only that, but the man's grandfather was saved when Yonkai treated his illness with a special treatment and medicine when all modern medicine had proved useless. And so Yonkai decided to ask for a private land to use. He just wanted a place to carve out a teleportation array so he could come and go, and the man responded with this. Though sweat dropping at the gift, Yonkai accepted it, which led to another secret that Izuku learned about his master. That he was technically an alien, though certainly not what Izuku expected. Not only was he from outer space, but possibly another dimension. Yonkai had come to this planet on a whim and hadn't expected to take a disciple, but since he had, he was going to do it right. So Yonkai made a teleportation array that connected to his own homeworld so he could travel back and forth whenever he wanted to do so. Since Yonkai wouldn't stay there forever, Izuku was made the landlord, with his first job as his disciple to protect and clean up the place, to which he eagerly accepted as he moved in. Yonkai promised to train him, but he did need to travel around the galaxy. This led to another thing. Izuku didn't only have Yonkai as his master, but several others who were friends or allied with Yonkai, with each one of them teaching Izuku every now and then. Inko was, of course, told the truth about everything, who immediately fainted upon hearing the news. All of them reassured Inko that they would take care of Izuku when she finally woke up again, which led to Inko deciding to accompany her husband on his job. The main reason she did so was that they made a special amulet for Inko, as well as a tag that allowed her to teleport back home anytime she wanted to, no matter where she was. The tag would serve as a beacon to teleport back to wherever her husband was. That way, she had the time to spend with her two favorite men in the whole world. Hisashi, despite his lack of presence in Izuku's life, always cared for him. It was just his job involved him traveling a lot, and he was very good at his job, making him high in demand. He did remember all important events related to Izuku, such as his birthday and such. Izuku took a deep breath, letting his cultivation run throughout his body. His masters had all been gentle but firm with his training. It was from them that he learned more than just cultivating martial arts, but other branches as well. Need to check on the garden, mumbled Izuku before grabbing a marble that had a diameter of about 35 millimeters. 1 second, he was there, another second, he was gone. The item dropped onto the ground gently. The item that Izuku had been holding was an artifact that had a sealed world inside it. Inside the world was a garden full of mysterious plants that Izuku was in charge of overseeing, with the passage of time accelerated for growing these plants. Of course, it also doubled as a storage artifact for Izuku to put all his supplies inside. Izuku always carried this artifact with him everywhere, hidden in his yellow backpack that he used. It was useful as all he needed to do to retrieve a certain item within the sealed world was thinking about it while his hands were in close proximity of the item. Once he was done checking through, Izuku exited out of the sealed world before hurrying back to his house. It was almost time for his lessons with his teachers, one of the things he looked forward to. Outside, in society, he was quirkless and was shunned by everyone. It didn't help that Katsuki always kept harassing him without getting into trouble. If he tried to respond, then he was always painted in a bad light, as teachers favored Katsuki, thinking with his powerful quirk he could be a hero and wanted to ride on his coattails. So Izuku gave up trying to make friends for the while, knowing none of them would help him. But he wasn't lonely. He had his family, and he had his teachers' families that played with him when they were visiting. Aldera Middle School. "Hey Bakugo," said a kid in the 7th grade classroom, "want to see what Deku is up to." Katsuki Bakugo looked up from his seat, glancing at the extra talking to him. He never bothered learning the names of his classmates, as they were just extras. The only name he technically remembered was Izuku, though he called him Deku since he was quirkless. He was also the only name Katsuki knew how to spell correctly, since Deku was derived from writing Izuku's name backward. "What for snap Katsuki? He has detention today," grinned the extra, for speaking ill of his betters. Katsuki scoffed at that before looking over to Izuku. Ever since that day, Izuku had stopped hanging out with him. At first, Katsuki thought that Izuku had been kidnapped, only to see him the next day. Then, his thoughts turned to thinking that Izuku was looking down on him, which caused him to get angry. Before Katsuki could do anything, though, Izuku ended up moving, which surprised him. His parents went to visit without him, but when they came back, they told him that he was not allowed to play with Izuku anymore. At first, Katsuki thought that Izuku had tattled on him or complained, but his parents were firm that Izuku had not told them anything. Instead, his new friend showed them the truth of Izuku and Katsuki's playtime, and the parents had not been amused. Words had been shouted that night, until a compromise finally came to be, to which Katsuki and Izuku were no longer friends, nor talked to each other. Still, as much Katsuki didn't want to admit it, Izuku was quite different now. He was still a quirkless Deku, but he had a backbone now. Sure, he took his detentions without complaint, but Katsuki could see something in his eyes, as if plotting something or deciding not to care. As for the detention, it was a bullshit reason. Katsuki saw some other extra had in his head that he could steal Izuku's food and then make him pay for more food. Izuku ignored him at first, calmly eating his own food when the extra tried to take it. Izuku turned, carrying his lunch tray away from the idiot while eating at a slightly faster pace. The bully tried to catch Izuku, but he kept dodging until he finished eating and put his tray away. The bully may have thought he was doing some sick hero moves, but all Katsuki could see was the bully flailing like an idiot. Take this, shouted the bully as he finally decided to use his quirk, which allowed him to extend his fingernails slightly longer. They were sharper and more durable than regular fingernails, but not by much. Izuku leaned back, allowing the bully to miss completely once more. The bully overextended himself and tripped, falling forward and coincidentally falling face first right into his own lunch that he hadn't even finished. Before a cry could even be heard, the teacher, who had been watching the whole thing, stood up. Midoriya, shouted the teacher as he stood up, dropping a red and black book that Katsuki saw the words meta before it flopped over. What do you think you're doing, causing trouble for other students and even hurting them go stand outside the hall immediately for your insolence? Even though Izuku had done absolutely nothing, the teacher was very biased, especially against Izuku. Izuku didn't say anything, but his glare made it easy to tell he was not amused. Katsuki swore he saw a flash of red as well as something shiny reflecting out of Izuku's pocket, but Izuku had already left. However, the teacher interpreted the glare as Izuku speaking rudely to him and so assigned detention. Izuku sighed as he sat alone in detention. His homeroom teacher was the most biased person of all times, in his opinion. He always tried to blame everything on him only, despite the fact he had nothing to do with the idiot hurting himself. Not only that, but a good 3/4 of the faculty always looked at him as if he was scum. Izuku had half a mind to blow off the detention, but decided to obey for now. In detention again, sighed a teacher as he walked into the detention hall. At least it's Tanaka-sensei today, thought Izuku. He was one of the few teachers who didn't discriminate against his quirkless status. Other teachers kept fudging with his grades, making his marks lower than the ones on whom they had pinned their hopes on becoming heroes, so as to ride off their coattails, such as Katsuki. Izuku, of course, wasn't taking this lying down. He had marked every single paper, gathered evidence, and recorded every infraction he had done with a statement saying he disagreed with every single one of them. Just a few more years, muttered Izuku as he opened up his cell phone before going to a specific website, the UA University website, where he wanted to apply to become a hero. Tanaka ignored whatever Izuku was doing in favor of grading assignments. He was well aware of the hate boner that almost all the staff seemed to have on Izuku, but was too powerless to do anything. Even the principal sided with the majority, deeming it as a necessary evil. So Tanaka decided to do everything he could to at least give Izuku some sort of comfort, volunteering to be the one to monitor Izuku's detention, which seemed to please the others, as they didn't want to be in the same classroom with a quirkless and hopeless student. Katsuki didn't know why or how, but he somehow caved into peer pressure and was now standing in front of gated door with all his classmates except Izuku. "Why am I here again?" questioned Katsuki as his classmates all chatted with each other. "All right, Deku." Katsuki looked around, seeing the whole place was gated with signs and saying keep out private property. Intruders will be persecuted. It was written in kanji, katakana, hiragana, and English, with signs all over the place, making it impossible for someone to have missed it. "Over here," grinned a classmate as his pointed mole-like nose twitched to the ground a little away from the gated door. "We can dig through here. For some reason, only the ground under the entrance is protected and has concrete underneath it. The rest is just dirt." "Then let's dig," grinned another student as his hand began to transform into rocky fists before digging. Another student used her quirk that manipulated wind to toss the dirt out, while another made soapy water to help soften the dirt. Soon enough, all of them had dug under the gate and past it, clearly trespassing. "Isn't this a bad idea?" asked a chubby male student with antlers like a deer. "Puff, it's just Deku's place," scoffed another student whose hair could become spikes. "What can that waste of space do? My mom says that people like him are a bane to society and should just die so proper humans can take their place. We're above the law when it comes to people like him." Katsuki twitched at that, wondering if it was a good idea. Sure, he was interested in what the hell Deku had been doing since that meeting with the weird man who punched a hero into the ground. But was this worth it? And those words, they sounded so villain-like. Yeah, plus it's not like we'll get in trouble. If anything, Deku will be the one taking the heat no matter what we do, giggled a girl with a bitch of voice, according to Katsuki himself. With everyone in agreement that there would be no consequences, but rather a possible chance to be called heroes, they continued forward. Katsuki followed, wondering why the hell he was following them still. Also another thing, he should be the only one that gets to call Izuku Deku. It was his nickname for him, damn it. Soon, they arrived to see the beautiful scenery, the waterfall gently feeding into the pond with flowers placed tastefully around the area. After taking in the scenery, one jealous classmate decided that Izuku didn't deserve to live in such a nice place, and began leading the others in desecrating the place. The waterfall was pushed and smashed, flowers ripped out and smashed, and several items decorating the place shattered into pieces. Then the pond itself was defiled by the teenagers urinating or defecating. One of them had explosive diarrhea, not Katsuki. All the while, Katsuki stood there watching, not quite believing what was going on. Was this what heroes did in Katsuki's mind? Heroes won, and that was all. All Might was the ultimate example of that. And not that Katsuki would want to admit, he was one of the biggest fanboys when it came to All Might, only comparable to Izuku. It was that simple for him. But right now, his worldview was being shaken. It had first started when he saw a hero lose against the strange man. Did Izuku deserve all this hate? Just for existing, would All Might approve of such actions? "Come on, Bakugo. Join the fun," shouted a student before eyeing the large villa before deciding it needed to be redecorated to be fit for a Deku. Before Katsuki could even respond or say that it wasn't right, or that he wasn't interested, a cold voice rang out. "What the hell are you all doing?" Few minutes prior, Izuku sighed as he made his way back home. Tanaka-sensei had let him go early, knowing his detention was bullshit. Still, he decided to persevere, if not just for now. All the evidence he had gathered would be enough to get out of that school. "Maybe I should have listened to my teachers about homeschooling," mumbled Izuku. One of them offered to march into the school and destroyed himself. But Izuku managed to stop him with one of his more reasonable teachers, the one with deep blue hair. Izuku arrived at the gate, ready to type in the password as well as scan his ID when he noticed something was off. His eyes trailed down the gates before noticing a hole that led underneath the gate and into the private land itself. Crouching down, Izuku noticed a button that was exactly identical to Aldera's school uniform. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he rushed inside through the gate, pondering why the hell the ground wasn't filled with concrete as directed, but more importantly, who had trespassed in. While it took the students about 5 minutes to arrive at the location, Izuku only took 30 seconds. When he arrived, his eyes widened in shock and his heart stopped. The once beautiful scenery had been defiled beyond belief. Izuku could see all the plants had been uprooted, the vases smashed, the waterfall broken, and the once purified pond now filled with feces and piss. All while the students seemed to enjoy doing such acts. "What the hell are you all doing?" roared Izuku, grabbing everyone's attention. At first, the students were all shy and embarrassed, refusing to look at Izuku. However, after the shock of being caught passed, one of the more cocky ones began marching his way towards Izuku, intending to show him just where he belonged. Izuku ignored him, staring straight at Katsuki Bakugo. "Did you lead them all here? Did you plan this?" asked Izuku with a stone-cold voice, looking at the person whom he once called friend. Katsuki hesitated at that moment. He wanted to bluster and say he was the leader, but he didn't want to claim credit for this. He hadn't even done anything, still too shocked at what was going on. Piss off, you don't deserve to talk to him, stated a lackey with a stretchy neck. Unlike you, he's going to go far. But don't worry, you can make it up to us all for being such a waste of space. Yeah, first, beg for forgiveness, scoffed a girl, following the hype train. Then, pay for our lunches. You could be our little gopher. It's the least you can do for polluting our space, said another. And finally, you're going to be our punching bag, so we can show the world that we can be heroes, while you can be the little weakling villain, said another one as his body expanded into a muscular stature. Izuku took a deep breath as almost all of the boys in the class surrounded him with leering grins, along with some of the girls joining in. Katsuki was still standing away from them when he noticed Izuku taking a deep breath. Despite their differences, Katsuki had been friends with Izuku since they were babies, so he was aware of the various ranges of Izuku's emotion. He was mostly defaulted to crybaby or happy and almost never anger. But when Izuku opened his eyes, Katsuki could see the flames of anger burning within him, an emotion that Katsuki was most familiar with himself, but most foreign to when it came to Izuku. Looks like my teachers were right, muttered Izuku to himself. Sometimes, the strong are the ones who control the laws. Strength is everything. Tang Sect Mysterious Heaven Treasure Principle: one cannot forever pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. Otherwise, one can really become a pig to the slaughter. The line rang through his mind, hearing his teacher's voice reciting it to him. One of the students was tired of waiting, and so tried to punch him with his rocky fists, intending on teaching Izuku a lesson. It was at this moment that they fucked up. Izuku parried that punch, guiding it away from him before countering with a right straight to the face towards his attacker. This won't hurt a bit, he's Corkle, thought the student, only to have his thoughts interrupted and silenced as Izuku's punch landed, sending an explosion of pain up the boy's brain before falling unconscious. Just because Izuku was quirkless didn't mean he was powerless, especially after being trained by some of the strongest cultivators, which included body tempering among other skills. He was considered at Chi Transformation, or Gushing Spring, or Profound Realm. But for the sake of simplifying everything, as each of his cultivator teachers had different names for a certain stage, he adopted one of the simpler ones. The ranking he used had none, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond, with each ranking separated by 5 ranks in ascending order. There was more after, but his teachers had him focus on those. It was only after completing diamond was he able to accompany them outside the world. He was able to use chi to layer over his body, and thus was a silver rank 4. Time seemed to freeze as everyone witnessed the boy with rocks for hair and could use his quirk to create rock fists falling unconscious. "Get him," screamed one of them, which caused everyone to attack. Despite Izuku's best effort to not emulate his master's words that was rather cringy and corny in this era, some of them couldn't help but slip into his own vocabulary. "Courting death," sneered Izuku as he quickly weaved his way through, using complicated footwork to get out of the encirclement. "I got him," shouted the student with a stretchy neck, only for Izuku to grab his vulnerable neck and squeeze, "Can't breathe." Izuku tossed him into the defiled pond without much thought, ducking under another student's amateur punch. The student had used his quirk to bulk himself up to give him extra strength, but at the cost of speed and accuracy, as well as a proper punching form. Izuku kicked him hard at where the kidney and lumbar spine were located. The student went down wheezing as he let go of his quirk due to pain. "Die!" screamed a student, his quirk allowing him to turn his hair into sharp spikes on the top of his head. At this point, he didn't care if he killed Izuku, so he lowered his head and charged forward like a bull, unable to really see his target other than remember where he was. Izuku flexed his wrist before pointing his left arm towards the charging student, all while using his right hand to grab the skull of another student trying to bite him with his sharp teeth. With just a clench of his fist, 2 shiny objects flashed through the air that originated from Izuku's sleeves. The 2 objects slammed into the charging student's skull, who hadn't seen the attack due to his lack of vision from his charge. Arg cried the student as he crouched down in pain, rubbing the top of his head. He didn't see Izuku hurling the biting student towards him, sending them both flying towards the pond, right into the other student trying to get up. Katsuki stood at the side, watching everything that was happening. While concerned about the fact that some of the extras were actually trying to go for the kill, he was more shocked at the fact Izuku was kicking ass. Sure, the extra was able to get a hit now and then, but nothing that couldn't be shrugged off. Izuku, however, wasn't holding back, even against girls. One of the girls tried to choke Izuku with her long blue hair, but Izuku yanked her hair towards him before knocking her out with a brutal lariat. As if it wasn't enough, he started swinging her like a flail, knocking out several other students, including one whose quirk allowed him to glow in the dark and nothing else. Also last place in their fitness test and academics, too. How he was supposed to be a better hero potential than Izuku was a wonder in itself. The student never applied himself, believing his quirk would allow him to coast through life. Katsuki watched Izuku finish up the last one with a sickening crack as he dislocated a leg. All the male students were down, and the female students who had fought were crying in pain. Only he and 3 other female students, who had been too frightened to even join, were unhurt. Katsuki's mind was arguing with one another. On one hand, he was thinking that Izuku was looking down on him all this time, but his more rational mind finally kicked in. Ever since that incident, the two had never met up anymore, so there was no reason for Izuku to tell him. But the quirkless kid that Katsuki had never deemed to be anything but a pebble was now a huge mountain. Deck began Katsuki, only for a gasp to suddenly ring out. "What happened here?" shrieked out Inko, having gotten out of the basement after teleporting back to spend time with Izuku. Her eyes bulged when she took into view. The beautiful scenery was desecrated, her plants destroyed, and the once clear, tranquil pond full of shit. Inko's eyes locked onto Katsuki. "Did you do this?" hissed Inko in a cold tone that caused Katsuki to shiver. "Did you lead them here?" "No," Annie responded Katsuki immediately. As much as he kept calling Izuku a Deku, he had nothing but respect for Inko, the kind woman who didn't have a bone of malice in her, or so he thought. It wasn't Inko's fault for making the assumption. Out of everyone in the area, only Katsuki would technically know where they lived now, as Izuku never brought friends home. "I think one of the other students followed me home," said Izuku, defending Katsuki from suspicion. Even if it wasn't his intention, they dug a hole underneath the fence to slip in. "That shouldn't have been possible," frowned Inko. "The whole area should have been lined with concrete underneath the gates unless they dug really deep past it." Still, there are injured students who had trespassed on private lands and destruction of property, so Inko called in the police and the hospital. It didn't take long for the students to be escorted out of the premises while a damage assessment was made. However, the fact a quirkless student had annihilated 25 other students with quirks was an insult to them, especially ones with families that religiously followed a certain policy or had ties to the hidden army of MLA. And so it wasn't long for 28 families to gather together to sue the Midoriya family for excess violence and whatever they could tack on. Meanwhile, back at the Bakugo household. Slap. Katsuki could only be stunned, unable to even move his neck back to normal as he had received a slap from his father, Masaru. Katsuki was used to his mother, Mitsuki, punching him on the head, punting him across the room, or hurling him to the floor. It was their way of showing affection somehow. However, Masaru had never done such a thing, always leaving it to Mitsuki for that punishment. It hurt him a lot more than he thought. "Do you know why I'm mad?" asked Masaru. Katsuki remained silent, unable to speak. Mitsuki was the one serving tea between the both of them, a rare sight indeed. "We were aware that after you gained your quirk and Izuku didn't, the two of you drifted apart. Of course, when we found out you'd been bullying literally your childhood friend since your birth, we were not pleased. But Izuku pleaded with us that since you were just a child and were playing around and to let it go. So we did, under a few circumstances," said Masaru slowly, "but Inko has always treated you kindly, has she not?" Katsuki stiffly nodded his head. He could remember the times that she had helped him despite not being on good terms with Izuku, sometimes giving him gifts from other countries, even if by proxy from his mom. So why would you stand aside and do nothing when all those students decided it was all right to violate private property like that? Asked Masaru. Why didn't you tell them not to or call the police? Or even us, when did the headstrong boy who always wanted to be the leader suddenly become a follower? Katsuki bristled at that comment before pondering that himself. Why did he go along with everyone? Before Masaru could continue, Mitsuki interrupted the lecture. Masaru, something's happening. I got a call from the Yubi family. They're all gathering up to sue Izuku for slander and whatever they can tack on. And from the sounds of it, they're confident they can win, said Mitsuki. Masaru frowned at that. In his perspective, it was a clear-cut case. The students had trespassed on private property, and not only that, vandalized the place with clear intent. Even if Izuku could be hit with excessive violence, it was all in the name of self-defense, as it was clear who had thrown the first punch. There were recordings of the whole fight. Not to mention the students broke the quirk restriction law, while Izuku, who was quirkless, did not. The fact that they were confident in winning meant they had plans in place that would make it go their way. Get the court date, order Masaru, we're going to show up, but not in support of them, but the Midoriya family. Katsuki, can you testify what happened? Yeah, nodded Katsuki, shaking his head to clear it up. I can do that. It was the stupid extra's fault for breaking into Annie Inko's place. 2 weeks later. Suspiciously, for a case that was filed so recently, it was slammed through the system with a court date set. Not only that, but the lawyer the Midoriya family had called in was unable to come due to an accident, and so they had been given a court lawyer by the judge, who looked uninterested in the whole proceedings. Not only that, it was a criminal court. Still, the Midoriya family had all their evidence ready. Even Hisashi had come back for this, pushing all his work aside for this. Though his boss was unhappy and threatened Hisashi, he pushed back. Hisashi was too valuable to lose, so the boss could only reluctantly back off. All rise for the judge, stated the bailiff, clearly giving Izuku a sneer. Soon, what was obviously a rigged trial began. The 28 families all gave tearful testimonies of their innocent child being lured by Izuku to a trap and other bullshit stories. As they finally finished their story, Inko and Hisashi tried to bring up their side, only to be sabotaged by their own lawyer, saying they had no defense and to proceed with the ruling. Ignoring their obviously sabotaged lawyer, Inko and Hisashi tried to bring up the facts that the children had trespassed on private property, damaged said property, and tried to hurt Izuku and attacked first, allowing Izuku to react in self-defense, not to mention breaking the quirk restriction laws and the fact that children actually tried to kill Izuku. Objection, stated the opposing lawyer representing the 28 families without even stating the reason for the objection. Sustained, said the judge. This evidence cannot be used in this trial. What shouted Mitsuki from behind? That's bullshit, you can't just do that. Silence, or you will be held in contempt, said the judge harshly. Now I've seen all I needed to see. It's clear that these 28 children were innocent while this devil-incarnate villain clearly attacked them, perhaps due to jealousy over his current state. The Midoriya family will have to pay compensation to all 28 families, and Izuku Midoriya will be sentenced to juvenile hall until he is 18, where he will be transferred to a prison for scum like him for 10 more years. The plan was to send Izuku into a juvenile hall near Daika City, where a certain army had complete autonomous control over the center, where they could rectify a mistake that should have been made a long time ago. Show him where he truly belonged, either under the new generation, the true humans, or in a volcano where all traces of his existence would disappear. Izuku felt his fists clench in anger at this injustice being carried out, all because he was quirkless. He saw the students laughing, sneering, taunting, and making rude gestures at him, with the parents having no concern for such behavior, or even joining them. It was their right to lord over a past relic that should have died long ago, according to their own thoughts. If I'm going to be a villain, then he'll make sure I—" Before the judge finished carrying out the sentence, before Izuku could finish his thoughts, the locked doors leading into the courtroom suddenly burst open. Everyone turned towards the door, some about to raise their voice at the rudeness before stopping in silence. How could they not, when one of the most elegant male species they had ever witnessed stepped into the room? Everything about him spoke of elegance. His aura spoke of confidence. His gentle steps, his flowing royal azure blue hair that despite being tied up, and his blue clothes looked like they had been made from the finest tailors and materials. "Who are you?" bristled the judge in anger. Master greeted Izuku hurriedly, only for the man to smile as he gently lifted him up. "I came when I heard what was going on," said the man. "You're one of my disciples, as well member of the Tang sect. If I didn't come to deal with this injustice, what sort of sect master would I be?" The man turned around to the judge. "My name is Tang-san. I'm one of Izuku's masters, and here to implore you to see the truth of your actions and to clear your eyes." Seeing how softly Tang-san seemed to speak, the judge regained his bluster before sneering. "What is there to see? My eyes are clear." The brat clearly manipulated and hurt those other children with trickery and underhanded methods with a clear villainous motive. If anything, my sentencing was too light. Instead, I sentenced Izuku Midoriya to life in a maximum prison without parole and will push for the death sentence. This case is over. The judge went to slam his gavel onto the sound block, only to find his gavel's momentum halted by Tang-san's hand. When did he thought the judge before freezing up? The once soft, gentle eyes of Tang-san suddenly turned fierce. In the judge's view, he felt like he was now standing before a god facing judgment, and it wasn't favorable. More specifically, a god of slaughter. The door from the side of the court suddenly opened up, with a rather strict-looking judge walking in with a third eye on his forehead. "Who dares interrupt my JUD?" began the judge, only to freeze when he saw who entered. In terms of ranking, he was just a mere junior magistrate, while the one who walked in was chief magistrate, someone who far outranked him. "I heard everything that was going on. You're a disgrace to the justice system. Bailiff, get him out of that chair. They'll be taking over this case, and send him to detention hall. We'll decide how to deal with him later," said the older judge. The other judge was quickly kicked out, along with the previous bailiff, before a retrial was quickly taken. "I'm not sure why or how this case was rushed through with such pathetic attempts. I will overhear and judge fairly," said the judge sternly. "I am Chief Magistrate Tadasuk." Just as he said that, a team of lawyers suddenly walked in from the entrance of the court, each one wearing expensive suits and Rolex watches. "We will be representing the Midoriya family in this case," stated the lead lawyer. "Hey, wait, I'm the court-assigned lawyer for this. You can't just take over. I'm handling this case," blustered the other lawyer, only to get a glare from the lead lawyer. "What's your name?" barked another lawyer. "Your license, bar ID. We saw your rather apathetic handling in this case. Where is your professionalism? Don't answer. It'll make sure you never practice law again." "This isn't going as planned," hissed one of the mothers to the lawyers representing them. "Don't worry, we can handle this," said the opposing lawyer, albeit slightly nervous. That nervousness sank into despair when the defense lawyer lifted his suitcase onto the table to reveal to them a personalized logo with a stylized Y that belonged to one company only, followed by the Roman numeral 1. Detnerat was a rich company in Japan, but that was only within Japan. Sure, nationally they were considered the richest. However, compared to multinational companies, they were still at the bottom of the rankings. The Yaoyorozu was one such company that far outstripped them. While he may work with Detnerat as their lawyer, he was not their best lawyer. The reason he had been chosen was to still keep a low profile, not to mention the case should have been an easy one. He was largely out of his league against the Yaoyorozu defense team, especially against their best ones. The Yaoyorozu lawyers had 5 different teams, each one ranked differently, with one being the best while 5 were the weakest, but even their weakest team could slaughter him. And now he was being placed against the best of the best. The lawyer felt his soul leaving as the team of lawyers all turned to glare at him, as if ready to eat him alive. And eat him alive they did. With the retrial underway, along with the mountain of evidence the previous judge had dismissed as irrelevant, it was a one-sided slaughter. As Izuku looked around, he noticed someone poking his head out from the side door. Taking a better look, he saw a face with orange hair and blue eyes giving a wink before pulling back. Izuku could only smile. Out of his masters, that particular one was the most cunning and vicious in revenge. "Looks like this is coming to an end," noted Tang-san as the final verdict was announced, with the Midoriya family coming out on top before standing up. "If I may," suggested Tang-san as the judge was about to announce the sentencing. "While they did do some rather harsh acts, they are still children. As seen, there's a lot of property damage that needs to be fixed. So instead of paying the full amount owed for the destruction of the property, we can cut it in half if they are willing to work to help renovate the land. It can be counted towards community service and, if applicable, training. We can start as early as tomorrow." The judge hummed for a second before glancing at the Midoriya family, asking if they were all right with this suggestion. While Hisashi wanted to incinerate them all for everything that had happened, he decided to keep his mouth shut, afraid his next words could potentially spit fire from anger. It was Inko who took over and nodded in agreement. "Then all 28 children will work to help renovate the lands, and they will have to pay 3/4 THS of the reparations fee," declared Judge Tadasuk. "I feel like a half would be too lenient. This case is over." With a loud bang, Tadasuk ended the case. "Inko, Hisashi," said Masaru as the Bakugo family quickly approached them. "My wife and I apologize for Katsuki's behavior. You can expect him to participate in helping renovate the lands. Even if he didn't do anything, he stood by doing nothing, which is just as bad. You may use him for as long as it's needed." The trio bowed in apology, though Mitsuki forced Katsuki to lower his head more when he didn't seem to bow low enough, and then lightly hitting his head when he wasn't saying anything. I'm sorry," apologized Katsuki, which was probably one of the hardest things to do with his own personality. "I should have done something. I don't know why, but I followed them like a damn sheep. They'll work hard to help fix everything." While the Bakugo family was apologizing, Tang-san couldn't help but notice the other 28 families were still giving them sneers as they passed, not even offering an apology. Another had a smirk, as if the sentence they had been given wouldn't go through. "It seems like we will have to do something about that," thought Tang-san. "Funny, even across worlds and dimensions, you still encounter people who think their lineage or whatever ego they have makes them above others. Now then, while we have the chance, we need to do something about the fence," said the lead lawyer as he adjusted his glasses. "The patriarch has told me he is ashamed that such a thing has happened and has promised to find a new company that will comply with all standards that have been set, not skimp over in order to finish the project faster." "I might have a company in mind," hummed Hisashi after drinking copious amounts of water. "They're a little slow, but they do excellent work. I think it started with AU. It's like Urara something. And that is the standard that we should look for," commented Tang-san. "Go ahead with it. I will contact Yonkai about this." Next day, Izuku sighed as he looked out to the pond. There was a lot of work to be done, even after removing all the shit and draining out the water. It was good for training, he supposed. Looking behind him, all he saw was Katsuki Bakugo and one other female student and nobody else. The missing students hadn't even offered any excuse, just sneered and walked away. Though it was an improvement, as they ignored him now. Even though the homeroom teacher had been informed about the punishment, he did nothing to enforce it, just giving Izuku a glare. "What the hell? Where is everybody?" cursed Katsuki. It was a unanimous vote. Everyone said they wouldn't do it. It was below them, stammered the girl nervously, and their parents agreed, and even said they wouldn't pay a cent. That the case wasn't legitimate. They're looking to appeal and sound confident. "Then why are you here?" asked Katsuki bluntly. "My family decided it would be safer to serve the sentence," mumbled the girl. While shocked at the blatant disrespect, Izuku sighed as his masters had told them that this would most likely happen, though they had promised they would take care of that. "Then we'll just start with the three of us. We have a lot of work to do," said Izuku. 2 weeks later. "Well, kill him," shouted a voice inside a room. Inside an abandoned warehouse, members of the 28 families gathered inside, though none of the children. It was comprised of adults only who were related to someone in those families one way or another, with all of them idolizing the Meta Liberation Army book like a religious text. Each one of them believed in the MLA creed and believed that they shouldn't have to pay up because some uppity, quirkless bug, whom they didn't even consider a human being, complained. "We should torture him first, make him see why he should have taken what happened as a blessing instead," giggled another member. "They'll make him eat shit," shouted another member. "I had diarrhea, and even then it'll be too good for him." "What about the parents?" asked another. "What about them?" scoffed a male who was sharpening his fingers. "They should thank us for getting rid of that scum. And if they aren't, then they are freak lovers who should be killed. We're the true path to the future. Those relics shouldn't exist anymore." He can just blame himself for not getting a quirk like a normal person. "Seems like you all haven't learned your lesson," chuckled a voice that rang throughout the room. Everyone turned toward the source of the voice to see Yang Kai leaning back against the closed entrance door. "Who are you?" hissed the crowd as they took fighting positions. "One of the masters of the boy you intend to kill," said Yang Kai without worry. "He's rather naive to believe in the best of people as well as the law, but it's certainly a refreshing outlook. This world is rather more organized than what I'm used to, I admit, but in the end, the world is still the same. Arrogant assholes who think the power they have is enough to lord over others. Quite embarrassing, really, seeing just how little you all have." They all bristled in fury before one of them with a rather hulking figure stepped forward, towering over Yang Kai. "Who do you think you are?" demanded the man. "Do you know who I am? I'm a soldier of the MLA. I've killed dozens of people like you who think the law will protect them. Newsflash, the strong devour the weak, and since I'm strong, I can kill whomever I want with my quirk, including you." "The boasting of an ant," yawned Yang Kai. "While it's certainly a dog-eat-dog universe out there, one needs to know whom one is barking against, otherwise they court death." "Death will show you what it means right now," shouted the man as his hand began to emit radiation. The others began to cheer him on. "Looks like someone is indeed courting death, along with the rest of you," sighed Yang Kai as he raised his hand. "Allow this king to teach you all a lesson, since you all clearly don't know how to write the word death." Before the man could react, Yang Kai slapped him in the face. The man couldn't really react, as he died instantly from a slap. His neck spun around, snapping his spine, but his body twisted and contorted far past his limits until he finally flew up into the middle of the opposing wall. Before gravity could take hold of the dead man, Yang Kai snapped his finger, which caused the man's body to suddenly inflate before he burst open like a balloon. The blood splattered purely against the wall, where the people could see not a splotch of blood, but rather a word traced out with the man's blood and guts. Everyone stared at that blood-stained wall for a second before freaking out, trying to escape. The man had casually slapped their strongest fighter and killed him without a thought. Not only that, but his blood had been used to write that word. They began rushing toward the exit on the opposite side of Yang Kai, only to see Tang Sin already standing there. "It's a moonless, windy night, isn't it?" questioned Tang San as a cloud floated over the top floor windows, shadowing his figure. But all they could see were those normally blue eyes turning red, filled with killing intent, perfect for killing. One of the men in the middle held up his arm, ready to blast his way out. It didn't matter that there were his own allies blocking his way. He just wanted to kill and escape. Before his transformed arm could fire, two knives found their way through his brain and throat. How the man could only think as the knives had somehow hit him without hitting anyone else. To anyone who was a resident of this specific planet, all they had seen was two flashes of light shooting forward, weaving through the crowd before finding their mark. "The windows to the side, we can escape there," shouted another as she rushed to the nearest window, only to see another man waiting there, this one with orange hair. "Get out of the way," shouted the woman hysterically as her hair turned to spikes to impale him. The man merely raised an eyebrow before lifting his hand up towards the charging woman. The woman instantly felt something change, as if gravity had increased in her area. She ended up collapsing onto the ground. Unfortunately for her, her hardened hair spikes broke against the floor, rebounding and piercing her heart. At this point, many of them were starting to freak out, especially when the orange-haired man began to float into the air. Then, with a humph, wings sprouted out from behind the man. The people could only gaze in fear and awe at the man, with his right wing black and his left wing white. It was like seeing a heavenly being descending upon them to inflict judgment. They began to beg for their life, wishing to escape this nightmare. "You all brought this on yourselves," said the winged man. "You targeted our disciple, and even when you were given a second chance, you chose death. So it's only fair we educate you all what it means." "Always one for the dramatics, aren't you?" Nelly chuckled Yonkai. "Who's the one who used a person's body to write that word?" Reposted Nelly with a chuckle. "That's enough. We should end this now," said Tang-san, though a show of theatrics would be welcome, if not to show these people their mistakes. The crowd shivered in fear as a change seemed to overtake the other two. They wet their pants when Tang-san suddenly grew eerie metal-looking spider legs from his back, while Yonkai seemed to transform into a dragon hybrid, though those sharp-looking claws looked like they could easily tear through them. It would take days before people would discover that the people who had gathered in the warehouse had gone missing. Izuku sighed as he wrote in his notebook, ignoring his teacher's version of history, going over before dawn of quirks of how the quirkless people were barbarian and lesser humans, firing jabbing remarks at Izuku. If that was true, why aren't we exploring space, thought Izuku to himself. His masters were already traveling through the stars, and they were technically quirkless. Also, the teacher might have forgotten to mention that before the dawn of quirks, the quirkless humans had managed to travel to the moon. And yet, 200 years later, there had been no advancement in space travel. The rise of quirks had stopped that for certain. Some people claimed that if it hadn't been for quirks, they as a civilization would have already been traveling through the stars. Not to mention they were still using technology that was almost the same as the 21st century despite being in the 22nd century. Barely any real advancement in technology, all because all research was being funneled into studying quirks. Izuku understood why, but to make it sound like all their current technology was only because those who had quirks had invented them, ignoring all the famous advancements, like being able to utilize electricity, were all quirkless people. And thus we, for the most part, the Homo superiors, began to lead the world into true peace, unlike the Homo sapiens, the quirkless barbarians, stated the teacher. Remember, this will be on the test. Izuku, along with Katsuki, ignored him. They knew damn well that despite their teacher's radical view, putting such views in their tests when they applied to UA University was a red flag that would ensure they would be kicked out, if not blackmarked. As the bell rang, Izuku put his stuff away, ignoring his teacher's glare as he walked out. However, before leaving, he turned around to look at his classmates. The same classmates that had defiled his home and were now ignoring the punishment that had been laid out for them. It had been 2 weeks and a day already, and though the students left him alone for the most part, almost all of them still sneered and taunted Izuku, though behind his back now. "As you all know," began Izuku, clearing his throat as he caught all their attention, "it's been 2 weeks since the court date. And out of the people who have come to actually do community service, only 2 students out of the other 29 students have come. The rest of you have blatantly ignored it despite the judge's ruling. As for the payment plan that has been set up, again, only 2 families have followed through with the first payments while the rest of you have ignored it, despite all the phone calls, emails, and mail. Please be warned that if you and your family do not follow through, the punishment for ignoring all of it will be quite harsh. After all, as the teacher said, we live in a society of law, not barbarians like the past, right?" The teacher growled at his message being thrown at his face, while the other students ignored Izuku's warning. They had been repeatedly told by their parents and their teachers that there was nothing to worry about, that a quirkless freak had no power over them. The rules were there to protect them, not a quirkless person. They had no such rights. Some of the students were wondering where some of their relatives, or in some cases, mother or father, were at. They had been the ones most vocal against Izuku and his family after all, only to suddenly disappear. They had promised to come back in a week and a half, promising everything would be fine, only to never return. At the warehouse, the police, along with some pro-heroes, had quarantined the whole warehouse. The reason was that it was a bloodbath inside. It had been first discovered by a security guard who had just been doing his rounds when he noticed the lights flickering inside that specific warehouse. The man opened the door to see all the gore covering the floor, walls, and ceiling. It was like seeing a horror movie scene, except it was real. The intense stench of blood made the man quickly run away before vomiting on the floor. It took the man several attempts to dial 110 for the police. Despite the man's warning, the dispatch only sent one police car to the warehouse. The two officers walked up to where the guard had pointed at, only to stop as they surveyed the area. The newbie instantly ran away to vomit while the more experienced one, with a grizzly bear face, merely took in everything before heading to the police car. Dispatch, we're going to need a lot more people here. Get forensics out here immediately, along with some pro-heroes if they're nearby, stated the veteran. It was only after he did so did he throw up. He had managed to push it away long enough to call for backup. Geez, what the hell happened here, muttered a forensic scientist as she and the others were trying to find some sort of evidence or blood sample to identify the victims. It was rather difficult, considering the blood was cross-contaminated with other blood and whatever else that was on the ground. Meanwhile, detectives were trying to figure out why such a thing happened. However, it was hard to paint a picture without knowing what the hell happened before. The only obvious thing was that a fight had happened, but the fact all the victims were torn to shreds without leaving an intact body was troubling. Some of the pro-heroes who arrived made a point to make a loud announcement that they were here, posturing while doing so before stating they would solve the case. Those specific heroes took one look inside the room before running away to barf up their food. Endeavor was one of the heroes who arrived at the scene later, his eyebrows raising at some pro-heroes vomiting their stomachs out. Weak stomachs, commented one of Endeavor's sidekicks. Stay outside, ordered Endeavor, surprising his sidekicks, but they did as ordered. Endeavor walked in before blinking, taking in everything in sight. After seeing everything, he didn't blame the ones with weak stomachs for barfing at the scene. It certainly took some iron will to be able to stomach what was seen. How long ago was this, asked Endeavor. We're not sure, but we think around midnight, replied an office. It's hard to identify the victims with everything being so contaminated with each other. Then what about that, asked Endeavor, pointing to a specific wall that had a certain character on it. Oh, that said the officer, we're not too sure, but we think it might have been a cult insignia that they painted on to represent death or something. Take a sample of that, ordered Endeavor. When the officer looked at Endeavor with a questioning look, he continued, that's not paint. That's human blood. Even if it isn't, there's no risk in taking a sample. From the looks of it, that's the only one that's not contaminated with other blood. The officer saluted before quickly ordering the forensic team to get a blood sample off the wall. Endeavor took in the scene before pondering just who could do such a thing and how powerful were they. Was it another villain trying to make a name, or perhaps a vigilante who decided to take a darker path of justice? Meanwhile, at a distance, Nieli, Yongkai, and Tang Xin stood there, looking over their handiwork. Killing all those ants had been child's play, even if they had lowered their own power levels by a lot. Well, that takes care of that, smirked Nieli. But don't forget, some ants just don't learn even if you slap their face. Sometimes you have to go deeper, reminded Yongkai. Those brats still haven't reported in, according to Izuku. Some people really can't see a chance, even if you rub it in their face. Those who refuse a toast must be forced to drink a forfeit, sighed Tang San. If they don't want to grab the chance given, then they can only be punished. Izuku is already gathering his proof against the school, right? Asked Nieli, Good brat knows that one can't be nice to everyone all the time. Hopefully he really takes in my principle, grinned Yonkai. Those who respect me 1 step, I respect 10 steps. Those that wrong me once, I beat 3 times. The school has been wronging him ever since he stepped in there, just because he's quirkless. Stupid fools don't understand what it means to have actual power. While I don't mind our student being ruthless, I hope he can also temper himself. Not everyone in that school deserves to burn. Izuku does mention a teacher who always tries to help him, said Tang-san. If he can't differentiate good from bad, then it will be troublesome. If Izuku had to rate his teachers, he would say that Nyeli was the most cunning, Yonkai was the most ruthless, and Tang-san was the most sophisticated, well-tempered. Each one he respected a lot, though, as they changed his life. Well, once Izuku finishes dealing with that school, I think he should be homeschooled for a bit, hummed Yonkai. Even if he went to a different school, there's a chance he might have to deal with the same shit. I'm sure the Yaoyorozu family would be eager to do so if I requested it. It would also give Izuku more time to cultivate. You were just saying that because you want our disciple to get together with their daughter, laughed Nyeli. Yonkai shrugged. Well, the patriarch and matriarch both insisted that their daughter be able to meet our disciple in a more formal setting as thanks for saving their lives. Though if the daughter grows up to be anything like her mother, then our disciple will be quite lucky. True, but you never know if there is somebody else, said Nyeli, wagging his finger. For what I remember, there used to be a fiery orange-haired girl who spent time with our disciple before she had to move. She seemed very attracted to him. Who knows, if they get back together there might be some competition. Or he could do like we did, and marry them both, laughed Yonkai, Nyeli following suit. After all, strong men attract women. Perhaps our disciple will not follow your polyamorous harem ways and establish just a single wife, like I did, coughed Tang-san. The 2 other cultivation masters just gave Tang-san a deadpan stare, causing him to slightly flinch at that gaze. What, asked Tang-san? We know that you have a wife, but don't bullshit on having another lover, declared Nyeli. Bullshit, how would I do that? You two have met my wife. You think I'd take another lover behind her back, said Tang-san, and aghast. I'm not like you two, especially Yonkai. I've heard stories about you from my wife when she talks to your wives. Yonkai could only whistle as he looked away, but Nyeli pushed on. Oh, while it's true you officially only have a wife, care to explain why Chien Rengsha's kid looks like yours? She looks nothing like me, stated Tang-san. Oh, sure. She's a carbon copy of her mother, except the eye shape and colors suspiciously look like yours, teased Nyeli. Not to mention, she always seems to glance at you at every chance. And what about Hulaina? No comment, replied Tang-san, turning around and walking away to signify this talk was over. You walking away just tells us we're right, shouted Yonkai, but was ignored. He really should let up, shrugged Nyeli, though I admit I was hesitant about taking another wife after Yi Ziyun, but it kind of rolled off there, especially with Xiao Ninger. I was lucky Yi Ziyun was understanding. Then the ball kept rolling with Yang Axian, Yu Yin, Xiao Yu, and Long Yuin, though that last one was kind of forced. In the end, you made your women happy like I did, shrugged Yonkai. We should head back anyways. They might be looking for us. The duo disappeared from view, and nobody even noticed them. The Uraraka family construction workers' owners were nervous as they approached the gate leading to Izuku's residence. How could they not be nervous at one moment? They were trying to figure out how to save money to fund their daughter's wish to become a hero while having a business that was slowly failing, and then next an offer of a lifetime appeared. A full-scale remodeling of property belonging to the Yaoyorozu family. And not just a branch of the said family, but the main family. The payoff from completing the job would help the family and business immensely, bringing them out of the red. But if they did it well, the prestige and recommendation from said family could bring them more work in the future. However, they were nervous, afraid there may be some hidden meaning behind this. After all, they weren't the fastest construction company, nor could they boast the best. They certainly did quality work, strictly following every guideline outlined on construction. But it wasn't enough. Other companies skimped out on some by utilizing quirks to build faster, But with fights breaking out every other day or so, nobody could tell if a building's integrity had been compromised, since usually the heroes or villains smashed through them all. Yes, they could probably gain more money if they loosened up on guidelines, but they didn't want to forsake their own morality for monetary gains. "What if they want our daughter?" whispered Mrs. Hannah Uraraka. "I've heard rich playboys will demand girls only to throw them away when they're done." "You watch too much drama," whispered Mr. Taka Uraraka, though he couldn't push that thought away. "If they do, then we refuse. I won't sell out our daughter just for money." The two parents could only glance back to their daughter, Ochako Uraraka, who had accompanied them to this business meeting. While they had wanted to leave her home, there was nobody to watch over her, as their neighbors' friends were all busy, and they didn't feel comfortable leaving her at home alone. They had no idea how long the meeting would take. They soon arrived at the house to see four teenagers working on the pond, with the male teenager with spiky hair cursing every so often. The family observed them digging the dirt out, tossing them into a trash bag that was promptly tossed into an area to remove later. While curious about why, their question was derailed when the patriarch of the Yairozu family greeted them personally. "Hello," greeted Hotaru Yairozu, "and pleased to see you could make it." "We're honored to be here," stammered Taka slightly. "You said you were interested in remodeling this land and the security around it. Could you clarify about that a little more?" "Of course," nodded Hotaru, before gesturing to the land before them. "But a little introduction may be in order. As you can see, the land is a mess, but that fault lies within those families who think they can do whatever they want without punishment. Here is a photo of what the land was like before and the aftermath after those students decided it was okay to desecrate this land." Taka and Hannah both looked at the photos while their daughter decided to join the other teenagers out of curiosity. "Holy crap," muttered Taka as he saw the aftermath photos. "Why would teenagers do this?" It was a disaster area, especially when he saw the clear pond water riddled with piss and feces. "Inflated sense of ego," said Hotaru curtly, especially since they refused the generous terms given to them for reparations. "They'll be making sure they pay for this disrespect." Hotaru took a deep breath before continuing. "This land is actually a gift to my benefactor, who not only saved my life, but helped my family from our enemies. Naturally, we wanted to repay him for his services. The boy with green hair you see outside is his disciple as well as the landowner. My daughter, Momo, wanted to accompany me today to spend some time with me, and when she saw this, she took the initiative to help out, saying it would help her hero training." Hotaru pointed out to where his daughter was, who had her hair tied up as she helped lift up a boulder with the green-haired boy. "She wants to be a hero?" questioned Hannah. "Surprise, right?" chuckled Hotaru, "but she has her heart set, though the man who saved my family probably had some influence on her. But let's focus on the details." Hannah and Taka studied the blueprints for a while before they mentally began calculating the costs. It would not be an easy job for sure, considering what they were asking. Not only were they helping restructure the land, but they were also going to inspect the gate around the area, as well as to ensure that cement blocks had been placed under the fence. Apparently, they had found a hole and were worried there were more leaks. "Being honest, this is going to be quite expensive," started Taka with a warning tone before giving an estimate. "Price is no objection," said Hotaru swiftly. "I want the best work done with quality materials." "That can be arranged," said Hannah, "but the time it will take will be." Hotaru interrupted them. "I'm not picky about the time frame either. Your company was recommended because of your stellar quality work. I want you to bring that to this land." The wife and husband glanced at each other, sending secret messages via facial expressions before turning back to Hotaru. "We can do that. Is there anything else?" asked Taka. When Hotaru said no, the couple was relieved that their little fear of their only daughter being bought was only just a nightmare. "Then we'll get to inspecting now," said Taka. "Which one do you want us to do first?" "The gate areas," replied Hotaru. "The land development can wait until later. I want to make sure this place is safe and secure. I'm thinking of installing security cameras as well." Knowing it would take some time, The couple went to find Ochako to tell her the news, only to see her joining the others in cleaning the pond. They could see she was talking to the boy with green hair and laughing about something. Ochako shouted Taka, "We're going to check the surrounding area for inspection. All right." "Okay, Daddy," shouted Ochako back, before turning back to talk to the boy. Chuckling, the couple began their inspection. A little later, their faces frowned at how clearly the previous company had slacked off on their part. The previous contract clearly stated for cement walls placed underground surrounding the area, and yet they could only find one at the gate entrance. When they told them of their inspection, Hotaru thanked them before dismissing them so they could get started on the project. "Now then," said Hotaru darkly as his face shadowed in anger, "I will be extracting every pound from that company for daring to cheat on me and embarrassing my benefactor." Later that day, the construction company that happened to be linked to Detnerat through various shell companies was sued to oblivion. Not even trying to declare bankruptcy would save them. Izuku sighed as he looked at the clock. It had been a complete month since the incident, and the rest of the families who were responsible for the incident never showed up, nor paid the first installment of the plan that had been established and signed. If they can't see what is given to them, then they deserve what's coming to them, thought Izuku. His masters had already told him about what had happened 2 weeks ago, and while Izuku was uncomfortable with his masters killing so easily, he accepted the fact that they all had lived in worlds where not killing an enemy could cause trouble for themselves in the future. Being kind to an enemy just meant being cruel to yourself. However, it wouldn't mean that Izuku would follow their path so easily, something they all approved, as they had no desire to have Izuku being too merciless and cruel. They had all witnessed those who had done so. Izuku glanced to see 2 of the students glaring at him. He noted it was the ones who had finally reported one of their parents missing, and he suspected that they had been a part of the group who had been planning to kill him until his masters put down that plan hard. The lunch bell finally rang, allowing Izuku to stretch his limbs before deciding to head to the roof to eat alone. It allowed him to check in the gardens to make sure all the plants were growing nicely. Yonkai had promised to start him on alchemy, being experienced in such a field. Even Yeli and Tang-san yielded to him in this field. And Yeli had more of a passing knowledge of the field, while Tang-san specialized in poison. Though Tang-san was going to teach him more about crafting Tang-sect weapons and techniques, while Yeli was going to go over some tactics and formations. Attention students blared the speakerphone over the school campus, catching everyone's attention. Please report the auditorium immediately. All students and staff report to the auditorium. Attendance is mandatory. Everyone blinked before they started marching over to the auditorium, wondering what it would be about. Izuku sighed before he felt something was going to happen in his gut. Maybe I should consider my family and my master's advice to be homeschooled instead, thought Izuku. Then I wouldn't have to deal with this much bullshit. Soon, everyone made it to the auditorium, where they were quickly seated. The school generously provided everyone a lunch, only for Izuku to somehow to be missed. When asked, the staff said they had run out, even though they blatantly had more behind them. Izuku merely shrugged before pulling out his own lunch he had stored inside the storage bead. Izuku had about 2 bites before it was slapped out of his hands onto the floor by a staff member, the food scattering onto the floor. "Don't eat during an announcement by the principal. It's impolite and against the rules," sneered the teacher. Izuku just dully gazed at him before looking around to see all the other students clearly eating their lunches without disruption. The teacher could feel the questioning glance before responding. "They are normal and the future, not like you talentless brat who's nothing but a wah." "That's enough. The principal is about to make an announcement." "There's no need to make such a scene," interrupted Tonka, cutting in front of the teacher. "Let it go." The teacher scoffed before leaving, deciding it wasn't worth his time. Tanaka watched him go before slyly pulling out a slightly squished egg sandwich that he had been hiding and tossing it to Izuku. "I'm sorry about that, but this was all I could sneak out," whispered Tanaka. Izuku nodded as he ate the sandwich in gratitude in quick bites before anyone could rat him out. Then, the principal of the school came up before making an announcement. Izuku instantly tuned him out as he was spouting something about humility, forgiveness, and something about being human. It wasn't until the principal specifically called for his class to come upstage did Izuku realize that something was up once more, again targeted at him. At this point, he was wondering if the whole school religiously followed the Meta Liberation War book, or if it was common for every middle school to be like this. "Midoriya, please stand over there," said the principal, pointing to an area in the middle of the stage, away from his classmates, with no change in his tone. Izuku did as he told, wondering just what was going on. As I said, forgiveness and humility is a big step in becoming a human being in this society, said the principal, which is why we will be taking this first step in a public setting. Izuku turned to look at the principal and the other 29 students there, while Katsuki and the one other student who had actually worked and paid their share, the other 27 hadn't done anything. Was this an attempt for the principal to help Izuku convince the 27 students to actually serve their punishment? "Midoriya, get down on your knees and apologize to your superior classmates," ordered the principal. "Nope, it was just another blatant discrimination attempt from the damn school." "Midoriya, jealousy is such an ugly sin," continued the principal with a mocking tone. "To think you would lead our brightest students to your home under false pretenses and then scam them out of their time and money. But justice will prevail, and humility and forgiveness is a big step into becoming a better person." Izuku had no doubt that the principal probably thought that he wasn't even a human being just because of a toe joint and a lack of a quirk. "Yes, your first step for forgiveness is to tell the police that it was a misunderstanding and that you're at fault," monologued the principal. "You should also pay reparations for physical and emotional damage. About 10 million yen to each student should do, as well as 100 million to the school for causing the staff such distress. And then sign this contract stating that you will serve them all as a servant. It's only fair, right? To become a proper person, one must know their proper place." 27 of the students jeered and hooted in response, while Katsuki and one other student stayed silent. In the audience, Izuku noted half of the students were cheering and agreeing with the principal, while another half stayed silent, looking away in discomfort. He noted that the latter half were the ones who had weak or villainous quirks and were the unpopular students. Most of the staff seemed to agree with the principal too. "So then, Midoriya, if you would just sign here, you could begin your path to where you truly belong," stated the principal as he pulled out a contract from somewhere. "Otherwise, things will be difficult for you here. You might not even graduate. Greed can be such an ugly sin as well." With all that, Izuku made the only real choice he had. "No," replied Izuku, ripping the contract in half. "They willingly trespassed into my family property despite all the warning signs posted, going through the gate without permission before willfully destroying property, before trying to blackmail me and bully me. All the actions of a typical villain. And yet instead of educating them, you want to enable them to continue such deeds, telling them it's fine to do so to anyone they want without repercussions. I'm not a scapegoat that you can just walk over." The principal merely huffed before his eyes gleamed as he snapped his fingers. Izuku suddenly felt wires wrapping around his limbs before they pulled, suspending him in midair. "Well, I didn't want to do this, but you left me no choice," sighed the principal in a fake tone. "We'll get that signature one way or the other, but I prefer this method." Izuku glanced over to see one of the staff, who had raised her hands. Izuku could see wires coming out of her fingers, letting him know she was the one responsible. Her quirk allowed her to fire out webbing similar to a spider from her fingers. She grinned, allowing her sharp teeth to show itself. It warmed Izuku's heart to see the only teacher whom he had respect for try to do something, but he was helpless as he was held back by the other staff members. "A little corporal punishment is in order," said the principal as he pulled out a wicked-looking whip with small spikes all over it. "You do know that it's illegal in Japan to do this," said Izuku dully. "It's illegal to do it on a normal human being, not a quirkless freak like you," snorted the principal, revealing his true colors. "You're not even human, just a bug that belongs underneath us true humans. Now, then, it's only fair for the students to get their share. With that, the principal handed the whip to a student, who looked eager to whip Izuku without punishment. Izuku stoically took the hits without even saying anything. With his cultivation, he could just create a key barrier right before impact, allowing him to protect himself. However, most of the kids failed to even land a proper hit, even with the principal teaching them. Soon, almost all of them had a turn before the whip was passed over to Katsuki. "Go ahead, Bakugo," said the principal, his voice oozing with pride. "Show the freak what it means to mess with the best. Make sure to hit him real hard." Katsuki's mind was racing through everything now, with seconds seemingly being extended into hours. What they were doing wasn't right, and yet everyone seemed to think it was okay. "Don't you want to be a hero?" asked the principal. "Then punish the villain in front of you. Show him what it means to be the best." Katsuki mechanically began to raise his hand, pulling the whip back. His eyes stared into Izuku as he looked back without any emotion. "Do it. Show that worthless Deku where he belongs," whispered a voice in Katsuki's head. It seemed to rebound and magnify in his mind. As Katsuki raised the whip higher, another voice and image blared in his mind, cutting through the voice. When did the headstrong boy, who always wanted to be the leader, suddenly become a follower? Katsuki could see his father's face, his voice ringing through the first voice, the look of disappointment. It was enough to shock Katsuki out of the trance, his eyes quickly roving all over the place until he noticed someone muttering behind the curtains. He saw a short, fat janitor with flabs of fat on his neck, muttering under his breath. Katsuki's ears strained, focusing on the man until he could hear his voice. "Punish that Deku. Make him bleed. Show him he's worthless," muttered the janitor. Katsuki's mind quickly pieced up everything that had been going on before his anger point peaked once more. With a roar, Katsuki snapped the whip down hard. Upon impact, it would certainly leave a mark that would be bloody, scarring flesh for sure. The whip's target did not land on Izuku, but rather on the janitor. "You asshole," roared Katsuki, surprising everyone at who Katsuki had hit instead as he threw the whip aside, blasting forward and tackling the janitor into the ground, who squealed in pain. "It was you who put those damn thoughts in my mind." In my subconscious, howled Katsuki, "Nobody messes with my mind." The principal, seeing things starting to fall apart, grabbed the whip while putting a spike at the cracker before snapping it towards Izuku, intent on gouging Izuku's eye out as punishment. It was at this point that multiple things happened. Izuku suddenly moved, grabbing the whip out of midair and halting its path. This, in response, moved the webbing that had tied Izuku up, showing he could have broken free any time. And the webbing was still connected to the woman who had been controlling it. And since the webbing was still taut with no slack, something had to give way for Izuku's movement. That happened to be the woman's arm, which had been forcefully twisted until her bones snapped under pressure. And finally, the auditorium door was blasted open. Who am I? Am I a dog or a mouse or a bear in Nizu, the dean of UA University, and also currently moonlighting as an educational inspector? I heard rumors about this school and came to investigate if it was true. Standing in front of the door was the nightmare of schools everywhere, the crusher of many hopeful students who tried to apply to his school for the hero course, Dean Nizu. Considering the acceptance rate to the UA hero course was 0.2, it was a title he accepted. Now then, I seem to be witnessing a rather illegal attempt at corporeal punishment. You may say whatever you want in your defense, but know that it will be used against you, even silence, stated Nizu. The fact that he didn't say can, but will, showed just how furious Nizu was. He was an avid advocate against discrimination, and right now, what he was seeing was discrimination and bullying at the highest levels, especially at a school where the authority figures were doing it. It certainly set a horrible example for the impressionable minds of teens who would go into society believing that this behavior was appropriate. "No, this is a mistake," panicked the principal, dropping the whip. This is false," shouted the principal, pointing at Izuku. He's a villain who was controlling us with a mind control quirk. Oh, thank you for saving us. Arrest him, send him to Tartarus. The principal ran towards Nizu before falling to his knees, sliding right in front of Nizu while assuming the Dejiza position. A mind control quirk questioned Nizu with a blank face. Try again. And more than aware of what is going on. Public humiliation and punishment while trying to act as if you were heroes. Attempted blackmailing just due to one's quirk status. The principal tried to switch tacks. You know, he's quirkless. That means everything we're doing is completely legal. He's not even a human being like you and I. Just an animal, like a cow. He's nothing more than a test subject for us two. Before the principal could continue speaking, he felt soft paws suddenly grab his jaw harshly. Mind repeating that again, said Nizu calmly, but anyone could see within his eyes was a fire burning, itching to incinerate the fools in his path. Shit, there's no other choice, thought the principal as he used his quirk, his hand transforming into an ice pick. It'll just kill this rat, and that way, we can continue our lesson on why the quirkless don't deserve to even live. No witnesses. Oh, and I didn't come alone, said Nizu with a malicious grin. The man felt his quirk suddenly leave, followed by a cloth wrapping around his hand. Before the principal knew it, he was being hurled to the ground. I had my fellow hero co-workers and the police with me, finished Nizu as heroes from UA University, along with a whole squadron of police officers, complete with a SWAT team. They flooded into the auditorium, swiftly arresting all the staff members before managing to pry Katsuki off the janitor. The wailing teacher with a broken arm was brought to the ambulance to have her arm wrapped into a cast before being arrested for quirk abuse. Izuku broke free of the webbing as the teacher had disconnected the webbing after having her arm broken. Students were quickly rounded up, and parents and her guardians were called in. Soon, the ones left in the auditorium were Izuku, Inko, Katsuki, Mitsuki, and one of the children who had been obediently following the punishment with her mother on one side with the rest of the students with their family were on the other side. Already the 27 families were jeering, insulting, and doing anything they could loudly while trying to pass themselves as the victim despite what they had done. Masaru alone managed to pull Mitsuki and Katsuki back from attacking them, especially at the janitor on the side. Enough, shouted a voice, silencing them all. Everyone looked to see an old man walking forward, his back hunched over, using a cane to help him walk. However, nobody commented about that. He was the father of the current patriarch of a Yaoyorozu family, the elder who helped lead the Yaoyorozu group. Good. It's annoying when insects buzz incessantly without cause, breathed the elder before snapping his attention toward the 27 families with a cold glare, causing them to stop. The elder slowly turned his gaze towards Izuku, with his face going considerably warmer. You must be his disciple, smiled the elder. I remember seeing you when your master came in with my son and did the impossible and cured me of my disease. Have no worries, Marino Yaoyorozu, will handle this and make sure they don't bother you ever again. With that, Marino turned around, his cane stamping into the ground harshly. You were all given a chance to repay the damages your brats caused on my ground, roared Marino, and you were even given leniency, as well a chance for them to do community service while training their quirks, all in an affordable payment plan tailored to your own income status. Yet despite the generous terms, you all turned your back and spat at it, thinking you were above it all. Did you think because Midoriya is quirkless that you could ignore and disdain him, knowing fully well that disrespecting him means disrespecting my family, the Yaoyorozu family, who stand with him well? That ends today. If you want take up on his generosity, then you can take up on my fury. All children who fail to show up will have a permanent mark on their records, as well as be recommended sent to Juvie Hall. If not prison as for payments, you will all pay what is owed by next week, with no exceptions, all of what is owed. That'll bankrupt us, cried out one of them. And I don't care, spat out Marino. Sell your houses or declare bankruptcy. But know that the Yaoyorozu will extract the full amount owed no matter what. While the families began wailing about the injustice or other things, a hero swung by. This hero was one of the ones who had swung by after a lot of arrests had already been made, and was purely joining in to provide backup, or in a more realistic case, gain more recognition by showcasing himself, helping arrest villains without actually having done anything. Now, don't you think that's too harsh? Asked the hero, taking on the 27 family side after inquiring and finding out about Izuku being quirkless. These young children still have a future. It would be a shame to force them to find other ways, like becoming a villain instead of a hero. While the families began to grasp at his words, others found his words quite literally bullshit. I mean, it's not like they did anything that they deserved this treatment, continued the hero before whispering, especially considering the other student is quirkless and a waste of space. Honestly, they were doing the right thing in punishing him to show where he belongs. What he didn't realize was that when he said that, he was still within earshot of Nizu and Marino. Being old didn't mean being deaf, as the hero realized that when he was hit in the shin by Marino. The hero went down onto one knee, only for his other knee to quickly follow as Nizu smacked him from behind. "Listen up, boy," snarled Marino. "I realize that you think taking on their side would make you think you'd get more fame, but you should realize all you did was put yourself on a platter for me to rip you apart as well. Indeed, you thought by doing such an act would make you look more heroic, but when you breathed out those words, you merely painted a target for him, and more importantly me," grinned Nizu as he grabbed the hero by his cheeks. "Now I know you're not a graduate at UA, otherwise you would have expelled if not rejected from the start. Which begs the question, which university allowed you to develop such a view? Looks like it'll be far busier than dismantling a middle school." As for the children, they were already given a chance and failed to repent. It doesn't matter who the other person is, but if a person willfully ignores the contract and laws placed in society, then they are no better than animals. How could society expect to grow when they ignore laws in place of their ego? The hero soon realized that he had committed career suicide by placing himself in front of two dragons. Eldorado Middle School was, of course, closed down with many of its staff being sent to jail. Izuku spoke up in defense of Tanaka, who had always tried to treat everyone fairly, and so was let go with just a warning as well as a new job waiting for him by the Yaoyorozu family's recommendation. It was then that Izuku decided he wanted to be homeschooled, as it would allow him to focus on his studies with his academics and his cultivation instead of being bullied and pointlessly wasting time. Inko was a little wary of this, as she was afraid that Izuku would become socially inept if he didn't spend time with others. But the fact was that he had no real friends at school, and there was no guarantee the new school would be the same. The Yaoyorozu family spared no expense in helping Izuku hire the best tutors once he expressed interest. What helped cinch the deal was when Izuku found out the constructors they had hired had a daughter who ended up having to accompany them to work after school while they were there working, as they didn't have enough money to hire a babysitter. Izuku managed to convince the Uraraka to have their daughter Ochako withdraw from her current middle school, so she have classes with Izuku with the tutor, thus allowing Izuku to have someone to socialize with. While the parents themselves were reluctant for a bit, they soon caved in when Ochako pleaded with her parents to let her. She admitted that she didn't have many friends at her own school due to her family's financial standing. Ochako didn't get invited to hang out as much as she always opted to go home so as to save as much money as they could, which led her to be an outcast as well as looked down upon, though nothing like Izuku's situation. Her parents felt guilty and relented since they would be working in that area for quite some time, especially since she would be tutored by the best tutors available. At the police station, the janitor had been slammed into a small interrogation room, awaiting interrogation. He sneered, thinking he would be released soon. There was no evidence against him, just a kid who was stating that he had used his quirk on him. It was true, as his quirk was called subliminal messaging, but there was no proof. All he had to do was wait, and when he was out, head sick the students on Izuku again. Suddenly, the door opened to reveal Mr. Bakugo by himself. The janitor raised his eyebrow at this as the man sat on the other side of the table. He had seen him before and thought him to be a rather meek man, though the wife was a total bombshell. "So you were the one who was influencing my son," said Masaru with a neutral tone. "Maybe," mocked the janitor, "there's no proof." Even if the police have my quirk on file, there's no proof that I used it. I could be just muttering it, and your son echoed my sentiments. Masaru just remained silent, staring at the janitor. Feeling like he was ahead, he decided to mock Masaru even further. You know, you should be careful how you treat me, taunted the janitor, who knows what thoughts could harbor in your son or wife. Maybe he'll become great or not. Perhaps your wife will grow tired of you and maybe want a taste of my rod, or maybe want to taste something new. Maybe more than one. She's a model, isn't she, who knows what she's doing or what her mind will tell her to do? And you, who knows, maybe you enjoy being cucked like that. Seeing how your son acts, it's hard to believe that he's even related to you. Maybe he's acid sweat, said Masaru, interrupting the janitor's spiel. That's my quirk. Ugh, began the janitor in surprise, only for Masaru to continue. I sweat acid, though mostly from my hands, explained Masaru. Luckily, I can control what I can sweat, though it is mostly combustive and explosive. Soap can neutralize it, and my wife's quirk, glycerin, also helps out a lot, so I don't accidentally set one off on her. But if I focus, I can choose what I sweat out sometimes. And my son's quirk, explosion, utilized nitroglycerin like sweat. The glycerin comes from my wife, of course, while the sulfur and nitric acid come from me. Why are you explaining this? Asked the janitor, feeling something was wrong, and he was scared. Did you know that both acids are rather corrosive? Questioned Masaru. Luckily, my body adapts to this, so I don't get affected as much. I can't just produce it like my son can, but it comes out as sweat. Feels rather hot in here, doesn't it? The janitor, not trusting his voice, nodded. He had noticed he had been sweating for a bit, and the room did seem a little warm. Makes a man sweat, said Masaru as he wiped his forehead with the back of his right hand and his neck with the back of his left hand. Well, I've taken enough of your time. It's getting too hot for me here, so I'm going to go buy some ice cream to cool down. Maybe take some for my wife. With that, Masaru stood up while flicking his hands forward towards the janitor. The janitor felt sweat drops hitting him, some getting into his eyes, but mostly on his face. That's your petty revenge, giggled the janitor. Getting sweat on me, wait till I get out of here. It'll make sure your wife becomes a whore for my dick. It'll make sure that you won't be able to get it up unless you watch your wife getting stuffed by other men while you. Masaru had already closed the door, causing the janitor to huff as he sat back down. He would be out, and his first objective would be to make that hot MILF his play tooie. Then he felt his eyes suddenly itch, as well as his skin, specifically where the sweat drops had landed. Suddenly, it burned, causing him to shout in pain. He screamed as he fell onto the floor, his hands clawing at his face while rubbing his eyes, only to make it worse. As he writhed in pain, he suddenly remembered Masaru's words, that his quirk was acid sweat, and he could focus on what he let out, and he was already sweating when he walked in. The janitor didn't get to think about it too much as pain overrode all his senses. Masaru slowly walked out of the police station, taking a deep breath. He didn't regret what he had done. The man had touched his kid, and he was going to make sure that he never did so again. If he was arrested, so be it. Mitsuki was the major money maker in the family, being a model, while he was mostly a designer. Don't worry, you won't be arrested, said a voice from behind him, causing Masaru to jolt in surprise before shaking it off. I've made sure of it. The police will just write this off as an accident of some sort. It doesn't help that he's got a nasty rep already and is actually wanted in a few other regions. Thank you, said Masaru, for arranging this meeting. If a man's child is hit, then it is natural for the older one to ask for justice, chuckled the voice. This is an unquestionable principle under the heavens. Go back home. Your child still has much to do. Masaru nodded as he quickly left. As the moon moved, it shined over the area where the voice originated to reveal Tang-san. With a shake of his head, Tang-san suddenly disappeared from view. By the time the police could get the janitor to a doctor, it had been too late. The man was permanently blind and his face scarred, but there was no sympathy for the man when he was sent to jail. It had been several years since that incident. Alder Middle School had been completely shut down due to it. What helped drive the stake in was the proof that Izuku had gathered over the year during his time there. However, it wasn't the only school that had suffered. After the hero who had committed career suicide in front of Nizu and Marino, Nizu investigated just where he went to high school and college. It ended up with another high school being closed and a college hero course being completely revamped when it was discovered the department head was a corrupt woman involved in embezzlement and spreading her own racist beliefs. Izuku was now in the last year of his high school education, getting ready for his choice of university. Despite everything that had happened, Izuku still wanted to become a hero. When it came time to choose his own path, Izuku chose to follow the Tao of life and death. He chose this path because he wanted to save as many people as he could and to bring justice to those who no longer lived but still had regrets. It sounded like a foolish dream, but it was one that Izuku wanted. And the best part was that his masters all gave him their blessings. None of them wanted Izuku to follow in their own paths, but to pursue his own. Each one of them taught Izuku auxiliary skills to complement his cultivation. Izuku also achieved straight 5s on his report cards, even if he was homeschooled. The Yaoyorozu family had hired the best tutors who would judge fairly. Though his social life was a little lacking, it wasn't as if he was completely alone. Momo would come to visit now and then when she wasn't busy with school or social event for the family. His father, who had gone up the ranks, now had more free time to come back home to spend precious quality time with Izuku. Katsuki was somewhat iffy, though he would come to visit, only to spar against Izuku to make sure that, in his own words, Deku doesn't slack off. Lastly, Ochako was a huge help. Ochako had joined in the tutoring session, becoming friends with Izuku and even closer. Even when the construction job was finished, Ochako wanted to stay with Izuku, stating that it would help improve her chances of becoming a hero. The parents couldn't really argue that Ochako wasn't getting the necessary education as she was being taught by the top tutors in the world. As for friendship with her old school, Ochako didn't have any close friends. This was mainly because of her economic situation, something the parents did feel a little guilty about. Ochako couldn't go out to play as often, and some of the students looked down at her. The two wouldn't just stay indoors, but also go out to spend time, whether it was the library, the arcade, or even just a park. When people looked at them, they would say that the two were very close, as if brothers and sisters, considering they knew each other's actions so well. Meanwhile, at that moment, the sounds of moans could be heard, as well as flesh slapping into one another before it fell silent. Two bodies laid against each other intertwined with no clothes on either one, breathing heavily. Just because people said they looked and acted like brother and sister didn't mean they were. The two began clean up after each other, putting their clothes on when a hand snaked over to the girl's chest, giving it a squeeze. Insatiable, scoffed Ochako as she gently swatted Izuku's hand. "How can I not be when you keep tempting me?" asked Izuku, as he gently hugged Ochako from behind, who was the one who initiated first with her hands. Kumi replied Ochako slyly as she pulled up her bra, letting Izuku help her clip it back on. "I merely wanted to grab the large sausage that I dropped while we were eating on the couch watching a movie. It's not my fault that it fell down toward your crotch, and I was too busy watching the movie to see where I was grabbing." "Yes, but instead of moving your hand away, you began to play with it," chuckled Izuku as he began to comb Ochako's hair down a little. Ochako stuck out her tongue a little before putting on the rest of her clothes and going to head back home. "My mom's expecting me to help out with dinner tonight." "You're going to leave me by myself tonight," pouted Izuku as he nipped Ochako's neck. Ochako turned around, grabbing his face before planting a kiss on Izuku's lips before leaning back. "You know damn well that I know you won't be sleeping alone tonight. Momo is coming over to study with you. Itsuka and Yui will probably come over if they have time. You have other lovers." "True, but each one of you is unique," whispered Izuku as he hugged Ochako. "Never forget that. It was you when we took each other's virginity." Having grown up next to each other almost daily, when Ochako joined Izuku for his tutoring, they became close if not best friends. When puberty hit, it hit hard for the two of them. They began to notice each other, and it didn't take long for the two of them to agree to explore each other's bodies. One thing led to another, and the two found themselves lying in bed, clothes scattered everywhere, with blood on the sheets. The two were lucky it had been a safe day and practiced safe sex since. "I know," smiled Ochako as she lightly patted Izuku's cheeks, "but Daddy is celebrating the big sale they recently had. It's thanks to your dad recommending us to Momo's family to do the whole reconstruction." Business began booming because of this deal, and soon a lot of companies wanted to use the same construction company that the Yaoyorozu family employed. The two said their goodbyes before Izuku went to grab something to drink before snapping on some weights. With a huff, Izuku began a series of stretches and exercises before finishing it up with a one-finger handstand. With each breath, all his muscles strained and trembled, allowing him to train his whole body. "That never gets tiring," breathed Izuku as he finished up. "Been a while since I went for a run." Izuku took a deep breath as he stopped to take a quick breather underneath a bridge. Though it was old-fashioned, Izuku had been carrying a basket full of rocks on his back during his whole run. Stretching his muscles a little, Izuku let his mind wander a little. He was now Platinum Rank 3, and though his progress was slower than his teacher's own experience, they were freaks of their own, and technically speaking, two of them had been reincarnated. They didn't push Izuku too harshly on his cultivation path either, as he was taking supplementary skills with them. Alchemy, smithing, formations, all paths that would inevitably take time away. But Izuku eagerly devoured each skill without complaint, something his teachers were happy to see Izuku doing. As Izuku finished taking his break, he heard something clanging. Taking a look towards the source, he saw a manhole cover dropping onto the ground before something slimy came up. "A medium-sized invisibility, cloaked to capture," muttered the sludge villain, pushing the cover back on a hole before leaping towards Izuku to capture him. He had just robbed a convenience store, only to run into All Might of all people. He ended up losing his loot before diving into the sewers in the hope of escaping before coming out. Seeing a teenager that happened to standing there, he resolved to take Izuku hostage. Izuku immediately tossed his basket right at the villain, allowing the large rocks to fly all over the sludge villain. The villain didn't flinch when a majority hit his body, but did wince when the basket and a rock hit his eyes. Something Izuku immediately noticed before compartmentalizing everything. The sludge villain threw out a blind lash in hopes of grabbing Izuku, only for him to duck under it before jumping away. "Damn it, kid, that hurt. I'm only trying to take over your body," shouted the sludge villain. "Now stand still. I need that body, I promise. After 45 seconds, you won't even feel a thing. I can't just play around. I need a body strong enough to defeat him that, or to hold hostage," thought the villain before sending multiple tentacles to capture Izuku. Izuku began weaving and dodging the tentacles, making violent cuts and movements that made him elusive like a ghost. How to deal with him, thought Izuku. Technically, I can use self-defense in this case, but the question of how to do it without being questioned or worse, interrogated. As Izuku kept dodging, he was surveying the surrounding area, looking for something to use. Toshinori Yagi, or better known by his hero name, All Might, punched the manhole cover out of the way before climbing out of the sewers, pursuing the sludge villain while still carrying his groceries. He blinked as he witnessed a civilian no older than perhaps 17 years old dodging the slippery villain that had almost escaped him. "Wow, those are some movements," whistled All Might in his mind. Such moves would perplex many opponents. He watched as Izuku dodged another attack, landing on his hands before spinning his body with a turn of his wrist to dodge another attack. All Might quickly slapped himself out of the trance he had put himself in, remembering he had a job to do as well as a time limit. "Damn, this bastard is slippery," thought the sludge villain. "His movements are so weird, it's like catching a ghost." "How about an all-out attack?" shouted the sludge villain as he fired multiple tentacles to surround Izuku. "You shall not do so," exclaimed All Might, announcing his presence while causing both Izuku to stop in admiration of his favorite hero while the sludge villain halted in fear and shock, Why? Because I am here. Shit, shouted the sludge villain, swinging a larger tentacle with the shape of a hand at the end to attack All Might. All Might easily ducked under the attack and cocked his right arm back. Texas. Smash. All Might threw a right straight, so powerful from a distance that the wind pressure exerted from the punch sent the sludge villain flying, disintegrating into small, manageable pieces. Izuku quickly lowered himself to the ground to stabilize himself from the buffeting winds, but All Might had calculated in Izuku and aimed the attack precisely so it wouldn't affect him as much. If Izuku hadn't met his masters and became numb to their achievements, perhaps at one time he would have stood there in awe at the presence of All Might. The man was currently stuffing the sludge villain into some emptied soda bottles that he had been conveniently carrying as part of his groceries. Now, well, he was still a bit of a fanboy. After all, it had been All Might that had inspired him to become a hero, to help rescue people, to save those in need, and to defeat those who wish to do injustice to others. "Are you all right?" asked All Might towards Izuku, snapping him out of his trance. "Yeah, I'm fine," nodded Izuku, just a bit excited and out of it to see you here in the flesh. All Might laughed with his booming voice and smile. "No worries. I'm glad I was here to help now then. I must take this villain to the authorities." All Might quickly put the soda bottles into his pockets before bending his knees down, for a pro doesn't just battle enemies, but time itself. "Thank you for your support, and farewell." Right before All Might jumped, though, Izuku saw it in slow motion. The soda bottle hadn't been properly secured in the pocket and was already slipping out. Instinctively, Izuku moved his hand, reaching out to tell All Might that it wasn't secured, or maybe even do it for him. All Might jumped into the air before noticing something was off, like his leg, specifically his left leg. Looking down, he noticed Izuku hanging onto his leg. "Hey, let go, there's a line between being too enthusiastic and you just crossed it," said All Might as his hand was about to pull Izuku off before remembering he was in the middle of the air. All Might quickly glanced around before finding a perfectly abandoned rooftop to land on. After landing, All Might took a glance down to see what was going on before noticing Izuku's hand was in his pocket. "You didn't secure the bottle properly," rasped out Izuku as he held up his other hand to show the bottle containing the sludge villain. "It fell as you were about to jump. You would have kicked at your jump, sending it flying somewhere. I wanted to stop you while catching the bottle, but you jumped before I could stop you." "Oh, sorry about that," blushed All Might. "Thank you for your concern. It seems I was a bit too hasty." Taking the soda bottle, this time All Might made sure it was safely secured in his cargo pants, even to go far as to use a string to wrap around his thigh. Well, time to begin All Might before he felt a jab of pain shooting through his body. "Shit, not now," cursed All Might mentally as he fought to maintain his current form. He couldn't reveal his secret now, especially to a civilian. Izuku hadn't noticed what was going on, but since the #1 hero was here in his presence, his inspiration to become a hero was because of him. He had a burning question to ask. All Might, Izuku half-shouted asked, drawing the man's attention. "Do you believe a quirkless person like I can become a pro hero?" Quirkless questioned All Might, his mind flashing back to Izuku dodging the villain's attacks. "I thought he had some sort of reflex enhancement quirk or a mutant one." "You're telling me that was done without a quirk?" All Might didn't get to pursue that thought as he coughed out blood once more, his body steaming. Izuku hadn't noticed as he looked up to the sky, continuing his words. "For most of my life, I've been told that I would amount to nothing. Peers would make fun of me or taunt me just because I was quirkless. A hero saw me being bullied and did nothing because I was quirkless. But I've also met people who believe in me. So I wanted to ask you, the person whom I aspired to become, to help save and rescue people with a smile that brings hope, can I become a hero?" Izuku looked down from the heavens just to see an emaciated All Might standing there. He blinked in shock before exclaiming, "What the hell happened? Are you an imposter?" The skinny man stood there before stating, "I am All Might," all while coughing up blood. Izuku had to shake his head, rubbing his eyes in hopes that it was an illusion, even slapping himself. All Might sat down before lifting up his shirt. Now that you've seen my true form, I might as well tell you the truth. Just don't go telling everyone about this. All right, truth is I suffered a major wound 5 years ago. Took out my left lung and stomach. Even after constant surgery and treatments, I've been reduced to this emaciated state. I can only work about 3 hours every day now. 5 years ago, was it Toxic Chainsaw, muttered Izuku as he approached All Might, grabbing his wrist before feeling his pulse with his fingers. That's the only notable high-ranking villain that you fought. I see you know your facts, but no, replied All Might, letting Izuku feel his pulse. Not quite sure what he was doing, but letting him as there was no harm. That punk wasn't strong enough to do this. This fight was never displayed to the public because of my request. I will save people with a smile. The symbol of peace cannot be daunted by evil. The reason I smile is to help push off the pressure of being a hero, as well as tricking the fear inside of me. All Might stood up, making Izuku let go of his wrist. A pro-hero must be willing to lay his or her life down on the line. I cannot say that you can become a pro-hero without a quirk, even with your training. Izuku's bangs shadowed over his eyes as All Might continued. If you want to help others, you could become a police officer. They are often teased because villains are delivered to their doorstep, but it's still a fine occupation. All Might looked down at Izuku, noticing his head was down. It hurt him to say that, but he didn't want people to risk their lives without knowing what they were getting into or not having enough power. It was sad, but it was the truth, in his opinion. Justice without power was inefficient, especially with villains growing stronger nowadays. It's not bad to dream, finished All Might as he moved to put his hand on Izuku's shoulder as if to comfort him, but you have to consider what's realistic. Before All Might could put his hand on Izuku's shoulder, he felt it being slapped away by Izuku's hand. All Might froze when Izuku looked up to meet his eyes in time to see a fire burning within as well as a cold gaze. You're just like those heroes, spat out Izuku, putting out lip service just to look good. I looked up to you, thinking you'd be different from those heroes. I was a kid when I saw a hero sneering at me when I was being beaten up. When asked why he wasn't helping me, he said that all he saw were some kids roughhousing around while also establishing the proper hierarchy and, I quote, and preparing the quirkless brat where he belongs, underneath as proper humans as slaves. All Might stiffened at that statement. He was being judged as the same as someone who had said those words, and they hurt him much more than the injury All for One had given him. Who said that snarled All Might, and please don't. Izuku interrupted him. I know it's not fair to compare you to him, but it just reminded me of that. Just because I was born quirkless into this world, I was treated as trash. Nobody would help me until I met my masters. But I looked up to you, thinking I could become someone that inspired hope. I wanted to save people to help those in need. I remember an interview where you said these lines, if you believe in yourself and worked hard, you too can become a hero. Izuku sighed as he turned away. We'll take your words into consideration, but I will prove you wrong and become a hero. As Izuku was about to leave, he paused for a second before pulling a bottle out of his pocket and tossing it to a stunned All Might, who managed to regain his wits to catch it. Eat that pill. It's a 9-transformation heavens pill. ITLL, heal up your organs. This also serves to sever the last link between you and me. From now on, I have no connections with you, declared Izuku before running towards the edge of the roof. All Might finally shook out of his shock, his hand reaching out, thinking Izuku was committing suicide or something, only to see Izuku jump off the roof. All Might quickly rushed forward, ready to bulk up again, only to see Izuku safely landing on top of another roof. What shocked him was Izuku kept running, hopping over rooftops without pause before vanishing from sight pretty fast. All Might had to take a deep breath as he contemplated the boy's words, as well as his own. He had already delivered the sludge villain to the nearest police station, and was now sitting down at a bench, watching kids playing around a water fountain. Were my words too harsh, thought All Might as he took a sip of water. Perhaps I should have toned it down, but I had no idea the boy had gone through such things. Then the words quirkless came crashing into All Might's mind, making him wince. He himself had been quirkless, hoping to do something to change the world. Just like that boy, he had dreams of becoming someone to change the world, and he was given the chance by his master Nana, who saw something in him. And the exact same scenario came into play, and I chose to reject him instead of following what Nana did. Thought All Might to himself miserably, "I'm a hypocrite, aren't I? But I didn't want the boy to suffer like I am." All Might contemplated about his past before he had gotten his quirk. Through his childhood and middle school, he had been taunted about his status before, but they were merely just words. As for parents, well, he had been orphaned during middle school due to a villain attack. The only key lining in that was his parents had been very rich, giving him enough to live off his trust funds. But he wanted more. He wanted to become someone who could stop such things, to make a situation not a common occurrence. Then in came Nana Shimura, with a quirk he hadn't expected to be transferable, who saw his dreams and gave him the tools to accomplish them. And years later, he had finally gotten revenge for his master's death by punching the arch-nemesis of his quirk, one for all, in the face and into the ground. He wasn't sure what happened afterward due to his injuries, but he was pretty sure he caved in the man's face and splattered his brains into the ground. And now a quirkless boy who had clearly been training asked the same question only to be rejected viciously by someone who had been in his same situation. "I need to make it up to him," declared All Might as he stood up. "I have to apologize for my callous words. And who knows, maybe he'll prove me wrong. He'll start by looking." All Might's words failed to continue as he realized he didn't even know the kid's name, just that he had green hair, freckles, and was pretty buff for his age. He said he wanted to become a hero. He looks like he's finishing up high school, meaning he'll be taking the hero entrance exams for the universities. If he looked up to me, then head try out for my alma mater, UA University. I can look for him there along with a few other entrance exams, concluded All Might. As he finished his thoughts, his hands touched the bottle that Izuku had given him. Lifting the bottle up, All Might uncorked the porcelain bottle before looking inside to see a big red pill about 1.5 centimeters in diameter. "Looks like a red jawbreaker," muttered All Might before he remembered Izuku's words about healing his organs. All Might severely doubted such a miracle pill existed when no quirks or surgery had been able to help him, and was about to toss it away when something in him stopped him. All Might looked at the pill once more before making a decision to cork the bottle once more and pocketing it. Not to throw it away, but still having doubts about the pill. Izuku was busy hammering away at a piece of metal with all his strength, uncaring that it had already been flattened. He was just doing it to vent his anger. Izuku raised his arm high once more to slam it into the metal when he felt someone grab his wrist. "I believe that's enough. Any more and you'll hurt yourself," said an amused voice. Izuku turned to see Niali had stopped him. "Sorry, just had to do something," mumbled Izuku. Niali shrugged before gesturing Izuku to come over to take a seat with him, pouring out some tea for the both of them. "So what's wrong?" asked Niali. "I met my idol All Might today on my run," said Izuku after a tense moment of silence. The big buff dude with blonde hair asked Niali for clarification, to which Izuku nodded. "Not every day that you meet your idol." "So what went wrong then?" "I asked him if a quirkless person like me could become a hero, and he said no," sighed Izuku. "Izuku," started Niali, only for Izuku to shake his head. "I know, and I told them I'd become one even without his approval," interrupted Izuku, but still, it was pretty disheartening to hear that from him. "It makes me wonder if I'm even worthy to be your disciple. My cultivation is slow compared to what you all have gone through, not to mention how powerful you all are." Niali chuckled. "Kid, the reason why our cultivation levels accelerated at such a young age is because we had some crazy coincidences. Technically, all of us have died at least once before we were reborn. Not very powerful if we died before, right? But our powers right now are mostly because our age is far greater than any of your people on this planet. With age comes wisdom and power, so to speak. Now, if you were to compare to the prodigies of those who lived in our worlds, yes, you would be considered the slower ones and perhaps weaker. But we don't care, because all three of us have been weak before, considered talentless, useless, and unable to defy destiny. And yet we didn't give up and climbed up to where we are. To become a cultivator means defying the heavens and earth. If your society deems you useless and a waste of space, then defy their expectations and ascend past them. Plus, despite your slow cultivation levels, you're learning 3 different auxiliaries: alchemy, blacksmithing, and formations. That's impressive, and not anybody can learn all 3 as you do and still keep up with your cultivation. Tangsen doesn't admit it, but he brags to his friends about you and your prodigious skills in learning the Tang sect skills, both outer and inner discipleships. He does smile to Zuko. And Yongkai tells his wife that does alchemy about your progress in it. Though I dabbled in it, he's far better than me in it, and his wife surpasses him in that, continued Nieli, so you have nothing to complain about. We're all proud of how far you've gotten. Izuku smiled at that before drawing a new piece of iron to smelt. While Momo could create all the parts he needed to make what he wanted to make, there was something about making the item himself with his heart and soul. Utilizing the Tang sect mysterious jade hand, Izuku went about crafting his newest item. Nieli smiled as he left Izuku alone. While they had been worried a little about Izuku learning all these different subjects, the boy had exceeded their expectations. Should get him a demon spirit soon, too, since his soul realm should be strong enough, muttered Nieli. Definitely a dragon bloodline, but which one would work best for him? Also should consider taking him to meet other cultivators around his level to some ancient ruins or realms. Izuku didn't hear anything as he was completely focused on his task now, though his mind couldn't help but drift to All Might. During their conversation, Izuku had felt his pulse and noticed all the injuries All Might had mentioned. But he also noticed something else. As he followed the Tao of life and death, he was naturally more attuned to souls. He had sensed 7 echoes, or souls, within All Might, and most surprisingly, they had willingly come over. Izuku couldn't feel any connections to their physical body, meaning their bodies had long been destroyed. And yet it wasn't like those dark cultivators his teachers had described to him before, who stole and ate other souls to strengthen themselves. Rather, they lived harmoniously within All Might's body. Probably some sort of quirk, muttered Izuku as he shelved those thoughts away. He had to focus on finishing up his tools as Nieli left. He was soon distracted when Momo arrived with her school books in the nude. An interesting fact about Momo was that she had a bit of a nudist streak from visiting the nudist beaches on her family trips. Obviously, she wouldn't flaunt it in public or at home except in her own room, but at Izuku's place, she was free to let go of her inhibitions. Despite arriving nude, the two did get their studies done, as they both wanted to get into UA University. Just being strong and athletic wouldn't cut it in one of the best hero courses in Japan. Of course, what happened after they finished their studies was another story. Next month, Izuku decided to change up his workout schedule for something new. The Takoba Municipal Beach was a trash heap with nobody wanting to clean it up due to how badly it had gotten. The city didn't want to waste money on a cleanup project, and heroes didn't want to do a job that gave them no income or fame in the short run. Perfect for training while doing community service, while also hiding from others. Izuku could just put all the trash into his storage device and toss it into a nearby landfill in a day, but Izuku decided to take the longer way and do it properly. Plus, who knew what sort of treasures could be lying around? He was sure Ochako would love some of the stuff that had been thrown out if they could fix it. Despite her family situation being better due to the Yayers of family being their reference, they were still frugal in their spending. All while still wearing the weights Nieli had given him, Izuku began moving objects to the proper recycling bins. Might need to hire a trash truck to move some of this other stuff to the landfill, thought Izuku. How does a refrigerator make it here anyways? And is that an OLED television set doesn't even look broken, so why throw it out and might take that home with me? As Izuku was separating the trash, 2 figures came into view. So that's where he is, huffed the first one with orange hair, tied up into a ponytail on the left side and teal eyes. He owes me a rematch. replied her friend with a black bob-shaped haircut and cerulean eyes. Come on, Yui, let's go, shouted the orange-haired girl as she rushed over to Izuku. Yui took her time to walk over instead. Izuku had finished clearing out a section of the area, creating a small space when he heard the sound of sand being displaced rapidly. Izuku felt someone jumping in the air before quickly diving forward in time to dodge a large palm strike right where he had been standing. "It's been a while," grinned Izuku as he quickly shucked off his weights, still upset about our spar last time. "I'll beat you this time," shouted Itsuka as she drew back her hand, getting into a basic kung fu stance. "Let's go." Itsuka blitzed forward, firing a barrage of punches at Izuku, who began dodging with the Tang Sex techniques, such as Ghost Perplexing Steps for footwork, Purple Demon Eye, which made his eyes glow purple but allowed him to see Itsuka's attacks in detail, enhancing his perception, and Mysterious Jade Hands to help parry her attacks without hurting his own hands. "Stop dodging so much," shouted Itsuka as Izuku continued to dodge. "That footwork of yours is so confusing and you won't teach it to me." "It's a technique from my teacher, for members only," replied Izuku half-heartedly. "I can't just teach it to you." "I was taught briefly by your teacher's wife. Doesn't that count?" shouted Itsuka as she tried to mix up her attack with a kick. "That was one of my master's wives, yes, but not the one who taught me these techniques," riposted Izuku. While Nelly had been teaching Izuku, one of his wives, Xiao Ninger, had been exploring a little before finding Itsuka and taught her how to fight for a little when the two were just children. When asked why Itsuka had caught her attention, she shrugged before replying that perhaps she saw a little of herself in Itsuka. Curious, Nelly brought Izuku over to have the two know each other, mostly for Izuku's benefit to socialize more. The two did get to know each other more and got closer until Itsuka had to move away. It was only more recently at the end of their first year of high school that they truly reconnected, though Itsuka was always asking for spars now. "Then can't you get me?" and shouted Itsuka before grabbing some sand and hurtling it at Izuku to blind him. "When he gives me permission, maybe," replied Izuku as he managed to dodge the sand attack, "but not before then. And let's end this." Izuku suddenly grabbed Itsuka's wrist, using Controlling Crane, Capturing Dragon to control her movements, Judo, throwing her right into the sand. Dang, it cursed Itsuka as Izuku threw a punch at Itsuka, only to stop right in front of her nose. "You win again." "Good to see you again, Itsuka," smiled Izuku as he unclenched his fist to give Itsuka a hand. Itsuka snorted as she grabbed the hand before letting Izuku pull her back onto her feet. Itsuka stretched her limbs out, testing her muscles for a second before tackling Izuku, planting her lips on his. The two ended up lying on a beach towel, courtesy of Yui, who had enlarged it. "I may have lost this fight, but I'm going to win our next one," said Itsuka with a lusty voice I brought back up. Yui gave Izuku a victory sign as her other hand snaked down past Izuku's waistband alongside with Itsuka. They were lucky nobody even swung by. Otherwise, they would have heard the noises Yui was making despite trying to be quiet. Several months passed as Izuku prepared for the entrance exam. The Yaoyoroza family had offered to get Izuku into the recommendation exam, but he refused. He wanted to earn his place. That, and his status as quirkless, might raise some eyebrows if he attended the recommendation exam. He had managed to raise his cultivation to Platinum rank 4, and was hoping to raise it to rank 5 before the exam. Breaking into Diamond, however, would be extremely difficult, at least according to his masters. It would involve some form of earth-shattering revelation or situation that normal cultivation training wouldn't do. They were prepared to take Izuku out of his world to explore a hidden realm filled with cultivators at his level. Taking a deep breath, Izuku took out his choice of weapon to practice on the beach. Izuku swung his weapon, taking in the strain. Izuku began to move in a blur, practicing his katas before ending it with a fierce strike against an abandoned vehicle. Spinning his weapon, Izuku slammed it into the sand to reveal a pole that was taller than him. Izuku had chosen a staff as his choice of weapon instead of the usual sword that most cultivators seem to choose. There were, of course, reasons for this. Izuku preferred something with a little more reach than all his other options. Momo also practiced Bojutsu, so it was a good bonding experience to fight against another staff user. It was also practical, since the staff could become a variety of weapons depending on how one held it. The staff that had been crafted for him was collapsible and telescopic, yet very durable, making it portable. Izuku looked around the area, noticing the beach was much cleaner now. Though it was mostly him, Ochako, Itsuka, Momo, and Yui would come to help out as well for their training. Especially with Yui and Ochako's quirk. One was able to alter the size of any object so it could be easily carried, and the other nullified the object's weight upon contact. With a month left, Izuku knew that Momo was taking the recommendation exam, and wish her luck. Momo wanted her reward after the exam, but Izuku would be gone for the month. Yonkai had decided to take Izuku into a rather well-known training realm for people at his cultivation level. When they arrived via teleportation array, and then by flying, Yonkai introduced him to a few other disciples who were readying themselves to jump into the realm. "Izuku, stop geeking out," said Yonkai as he saw Izuku rapidly looking all around him while jotting everything down in his notebook. "Sorry, master, but it's my first time on another planet," blushed Izuku. "I suppose that's true," shrugged Yonkai. "My wife, Xiaoning Chong, is the star master of this planet, so she's more or less aware of what's going on if she focuses. She'll be looking over your safety while you are inside, but this is your training. Despite the fact your cultivation level is roughly the same as everybody going in, I will admit thanks to Nyeli and Tang San's help, you are more than prepared, along with your ingenuity. But what you lack is experience, so this will be good for you." Izuku nodded as the training realm opened, and was about to walk into it before Yonkai pulled him aside once more. "One more thing. I know it's frowned upon in your own world and society, but in the world of cultivation, it's kill or be killed. Leave your common sense when out here. Do not hesitate to kill if your life is in danger, otherwise you will die," warned Yonkai sternly. "Remember, it's cruelty to yourself if you show mercy to your enemies. I'm not saying kill everyone, just you can't be kind to people who don't respect you. Only when you're strong enough can you adopt such an attitude. For instance, your masters don't care what weaklings say, because no matter what they do, they can't hurt us. So learn to temper yourself and use your own judgment. Ignore those who like to trash talk. I was a paragon of virtue on that in your cultivation level, you know." While Izuku understood the message, he couldn't help but comment to himself, "Really, master, I saw you beat up someone on our way here because they made a rude comment about your wife." Taking a deep breath, Izuku entered the training realm. Upon entering, Izuku landed in a forest before immediately surveying his surroundings. Without hesitation, Izuku pulled out a weapon from his storage. Although the godly Juga crossbow was a deadly weapon, Tangsen was not one to step away from innovation and admitted that the use of firearms was quite useful. However, he attributed such innovation to the fact that there had been no such thing as cultivation in Izuku's world. So right now, Izuku had pulled out a handgun that he had crafted under Tang-san's eyes that was able to use his ki. "All right, let's do this. Breathe out, Izuku. Let's head to the first objective." With that, Izuku leaped forward into the unknown, ready to prove that he could handle this. Thanks for watching.